afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. My name is Sonia Shorey. For those who might not have had the chance to meet me just yet, I have the privilege of serving as the Vice President, Strategy, Marketing, and Communications here at Invest Ottawa and Bayview Yards. I am so thrilled to be surrounded by some great people today. Bayview is back, and we can't wait to welcome our community back to our innovation hub. And I'm incredibly excited. Yeah, that deserves some applause. We're back. We are coming out of this pandemic. And I am incredibly excited to welcome you to the launch of the 4th International Women's Week. Today, our launch event, the F Factor, Fueling Women Founders. This hybrid style event is made possible by our stellar platform partner, Hopin, and we are thrilled to have business entrepreneurs and women leaders from right across the country, around the world, and of course here in our great region, Canada's capital, joined by fellow allies, investors, thought leaders, partners. It's just going to be an incredible month, and that's what it is. Let's call a spade a spade. It is a month of incredible integrated activities that we are thrilled to welcome you to with all of our collaborators, and I'm particularly honored today to be joined by my friend and colleague from LSpark, Steph Reed, our co-MC for today, Director of Marketing at LSpark. Welcome, Steph.
Thanks, Sonia, for the warm introduction. Hi, everyone. As Sonia said, I'm Steph Reed, Marketing Director at LSpark, Canada's largest software as a service accelerator. And we are delighted to be your MCs for today. It is so great to be back in Ottawa with a live audience here at Bayview Yards, buzzing with activity and life. I was just working here earlier this morning. It's just incredible. But before we launch our special program, it is my pleasure to introduce Rita Alma, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist at Invest Ottawa and Bayview Yards, who will deliver our land acknowledgement.
As we're coming together today for the purpose of building and supporting women's leadership and entrepreneurship, it's important to approach this project with meaning and intention. This is why I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our work and the organization's presence on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Unceded means that these lands, which we now call Ottawa, were never signed away by the Anishinaabe people who inhabited them before Europeans settled in North America. In other words, this land was stolen. I'm raising this as part of a personal commitment to truth and reconciliation, knowing that the first step is to admit the truth, and that Indigenous leaders have been calling on non-Indigenous voices to help do so. The truth also means acknowledging the ways in which colonization and its effects are gendered, as evidenced by the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women in our country, for example. Second, we acknowledge that the Algonquin Anishinaabe people are still here. Part of the intentions and effects of colonization are to erase the existence of Indigenous people, and we do this land acknowledgement to counter that force of erasure. Lastly, I'd like to call attention to another of colonization's effects: the intentional separation and marginalization of Indigenous people, which has meant that most settlers and their descendants have little to no connections to Indigenous communities and knowledges. Being systematically separated from a whole group of people and a critical body of knowledge, especially in the time of climate emergency, is and continues to be a huge loss and poses a growing risk to our collective future. I'd love to ask us now to take a moment to scan your personal and professional circles. Ask yourself, who's missing? And how can I build meaningful connections with Indigenous people close to me and take just one action in the next week to reverse the damage and separation that colonization has caused? Let's take a moment of silence here to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rita, for that beautiful and powerful land acknowledgement. We are truly honored to have you as a member of our team and as our community. And of course, International Women's Week is truly all about community, every woman, every walk of life, and an opportunity to propel her forward. Our goal together with all of you is to maximize our collective impact on current and aspiring women leaders from every background here at home, across Canada, and around the world. And of course, there's a tremendous degree of pain in our world right now. There has been pain in our community, and we want to send out our heartfelt thoughts and prayers and all the best to those overseas who are struggling, including the people of the Ukraine and all those who are suffering strife. We are hopeful for peace and just want to extend that important message today. As we enter the 4th year of International Women's Week, we're really committed to building a community that inspires, equips, and empowers women from entrepreneurship and innovation to investment, Main Street business, tech, academia, government, and nonprofits. This is not about a series of events. This is a long-term sustainable driver for change, and it is change that is much needed. And we are just beginning today. There is 4 weeks of integrated programming, all for you.
Over the course of March, we will bring our strengths to bear as a community for our community to pave the way for women in business to achieve impact on our economy and society in a post-pandemic era. Throughout International Women's Week, we are honored to collaborate with dozens of local, regional, and global partners who join us to realize this vision. Thank you all for joining us and being a part of our journey. It will take women and men working together as a unified force to drive change. And this is at the heart of International Women's Week.
That is so true, Steph. The objectives we're pursuing together have never been more important. We all know the pandemic has had a disproportionate impact on women, particularly those from marginalized communities. This is an issue that impacts all of us, our economy, our society, and our community. I want to take a moment to reflect on some of the data that we've been gathering. Today, just 4.8% of CEOs of a TSX-listed company in Canada are women. 53% of tech companies have no women executives. Between entry-level and C-suite positions, the representation of women of color drops by nearly 75%. In 2021, just 2.3% of venture capital funding on this planet went to woman-founded companies, and only 1% of US VC funding went to Black entrepreneurs. Women comprise 8% of boards of directors in Canadian tech, and 73 have no women board members at all. Only 5% of Canadian tech companies have a solo woman CEO, and only one woman-led company in tech went public last year, and we have her at the Women's Angel Network breakfast tomorrow. So please join us and hear from Judy Hess, Copperleaf Technologies CEO. We know these statistics are alarming, they're completely unacceptable, and they must change, and that's why we host International Women's Week with all of you. It underscores the need for the urgent action that is required to increase the number of women leaders in our city, in our country, and our world. Canada's economy could achieve $150 billion in incremental GDP by 2026 if we prioritize gender equity. And together as an integrated and unified community, we believe that we can lead the country and the world on this front. And our team is committed to making this significant progress with all of you. We're proud to collaborate with all of our partners, our champions and allies who join us today, our community, and so many members of our ecosystem, lots of whom are in this audience today, both here at Bayview and virtually. Our board of directors, our Women-Owned Founders Subcommittee, mentors, advisors, sponsors, partners, key investors like the City of Ottawa, the Government of Ontario, and the Government of Canada, including our friends at FedDev Ontario. And of course, our team, the employees of Invest Ottawa, Bayview, and AreaX.O, who drive progress on these goals tirelessly with us all year long in the programs and services we deliver each day. Together, we've established a bold vision to be the best city in the world where women can launch, grow, and scale successful companies, and to help create the first $100 million woman-owned company in this region. It's long overdue, and we absolutely have the potential. These are the companies that will foster the thriving global business hub and tech hub that we are, create a wealth of new jobs, attract top talent and investment to our city. We all have a stake. And it's through sustained collaboration to realize this vision, and our community is founded on that. You'll experience this today and in the weeks ahead and throughout the year, because we don't focus on this objective just in the month of March. It is a commitment that we pursue all year long together with you. And it's the vision that underpins our event today.
So welcome to the F Factor, Fueling Women Founders. We're about to have fierce, fearless, and very frank discussions on the F words that impact women tech entrepreneurs and business leaders who continue to fight through the pandemic and demonstrate grit and resilience. Before we launch our program, I would like to share a few housekeeping notes for our hybrid event today. This includes those who are joining us here on site and those who are joining us online. First things first, your health and safety is our top priority. For those who are here with us in person today at Bayview Yards, we thank you for adhering to all of our health and safety protocols. You are welcome to remove your mask when you are seated and enjoying the event. We ask that you wear your mask when you are moving throughout the venue. You are welcome to remove your mask when you are enjoying some of the great snacks and beverages we have for you today. We hope you will use the hand sanitizer you received when you signed in with us at reception. Our restrooms are located just down the stairs near the entrance and behind the stage. We thank you in advance for placing your phone on silent. We aim to create the best possible experience for everybody. To connect to Wi-Fi, please look for our Invest Ottawa guest network and use the password available at the reception desk and posted throughout the facility. And for those who join us online, we also look forward to receiving questions from our speakers and panelists via Hop-in Chat, our conference platform. This includes those in our audience here at Bayview and online. Please use the chat function to submit your questions in real time, and we will aim to address as many as possible at the end of each session.
We're trying something new today. We are going to create little 5-minute buffers in between our keynote sessions. Our amazing event team wanted to give everyone an opportunity to stretch, get that little health break, grab a coffee or your favorite beverage. So you're going to have an opportunity here in the venue to do a little bit of chatting and a little bit of networking. And for those at home who join us virtually, to get that stretch in and preserve your health and get moving. Please be sure to help us share your experience on social media today using the hashtags WeMeanBusiness and IWW2022. Create some amazing buzz. For those who are with us today, we are recording our entire event, and these events are free. Invest Ottawa's events are free so that we can maximize the impact and reach for women from every single walk of life. We'll be taking some snapshots and some video footage, as we always do, and sharing it broadly. And lastly, we're excited to share a surprise with you. We have some prizes we will be giving away throughout the session, and they are the Media Mastery course that is offered by our final keynote today, Sarah Lacy. It's an amazing prize package, and we will be raffling off 2. You have to be online to receive. So if you are not with us, you will not be eligible, but you will receive your chance to enter throughout via the Hop-in platform with our amazing event manager, Sam. It's now my pleasure to kick off our opening presentation where we deliver to you the progress that we've made against our Women Founders and Owners strategy. Sam, thank you for queuing up that presentation. It's going to be my honor to welcome our first speaker in just one moment because we wanted to do a very special warm shout out to Shav Hasfel-McIntosh. She is our chair of our Women Founders and Owners Subcommittee. She is also a director of the board of Invest Ottawa. She deeply regrets she could not be with us today. Shav, your leadership, your inspiration have helped us to get to where we are today. We could not be where we are without you. We miss you, we admire you, and we thank you for everything you have done for Invest and for our community. And with that, I am now privileged to hand the microphone over to my friend and colleague, our co-chair of the board, Susan Richards.
All right, this is weird, really, frankly. Exciting time for everybody, but it's a weird time in the world, in our city, and I want to acknowledge that to start things off. So welcome to everybody that's here. I want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to take pause and feel the energy of each other in the room, because that is a great privilege we haven't had for a couple of years now. And I know I intend to try to feel that energy vibe. And if you're joining us from home, or from your office or from your home office, then I want you to take a moment to give this space to yourself to really enjoy this opportunity. 2 years ago, I felt the most empowered ever coming off of International Women's Week as we entered the pandemic. And I really rode that wave, like many of you, for weeks and months as we shifted to times we had never anticipated. And 2 years later, I think we're tired, exhausted. It's a heavy time in our global community, and it's extremely difficult for women. This is an empowering event. We want to celebrate. This is an opportunity for us to celebrate each other and for us to get inspired and see the opportunities. with all that is going on, there will be business opportunities that we can seize. There have been funding opportunities unlike anything we've seen before in 2021. They will carry over. But we have to have the right energy amongst each other, working collaboratively to be able to seize those. So for myself and for everybody else, I invite you to join me in a silly act of taking 3 deep breaths, because I think we could all benefit from calming down. And now decide how you want to make International Women's Month be a part of your life. If you're at home and you're multitasking, you may want to multitask. You may want to put a pin in what else you're working on and fully pay attention. You may want to bring your laptop to the kitchen and chop up the vegetables while you consume this. That's a favorite act of mine. You may, do you. Take the liberty, give yourself permission to do whatever you need to do to fully participate in International Women's Month, because there's been a tremendous collaboration of powerful, fierce women. We have courageous women who are going to share their stories. You will be inspired, and we don't want to miss this opportunity. It's easy to miss when you're at home with all the worries and the heaviness. Let's just fully tune in. And that's my key thing, the intention that I thought about when I anticipated this conversation, that the goal for me as co-chair of Invest Ottawa, the idea, the premise behind everything that's been happening in the last few years was because half of the businesses opened in Canada are women and half are men. But when you look at the entrepreneurial landscape, it's 50-50, more or less. But as those businesses scale, it is not 50-50. And so we are passionately doing what we can to knock down systemic barriers, to work together. We have made progress. There's so much more to do. We've lost pace with the pandemic, but we have seen through the people of Ukraine what you can do with passion-inspired intention. And so today, let's join together, be inspired, be generous of assumptions as you're watching and receiving people's informations. I say that on behalf of myself, because many of us are unpracticed when it comes to coming together as people. And let's do this together. So please enjoy the afternoon and the following month. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Tremblay, and I'm very blessed to lead Invest Ottawa and Bayview Yards. We've actually just amalgamated the company, so we're now fully Invest Ottawa as our fiscal entity. Bayview Yards is a place. It's an important place, but we're now one company. It took us quite a while to do that. It was complicated, but I do welcome you here today. This is our fourth. I actually kind of can't believe that, Sonia. 4 times that we've actually gotten into some heavy programming, and I'm thrilled that we are. When I think about the plan we put together almost 5 years ago with 9 different stakeholder groups across our city, we wanted to really unlock the full potential of Ottawa. That was our goal. We had some fancy words to talk about it, but implied in that, of course, if you're going to unlock the full potential, you want everyone to be able to participate. And we set out 3 objectives that went with that vision of unlocking the full potential. And that included being operationally strong. We wanted to be effective in everything that we did. Every dollar that went in would really be highly effective in helping anyone with ambition to really seize their biggest dreams. The second was around market-led innovation, and that was this idea of connecting our companies to long-range potential, supply chains, that kind of thing, which would not act as like a short fuse single deal opportunity. It would be going after long-range markets is the best way to ensure long-range growth. And then the third was talent. And talent is an extremely important part of the work that we do. But when I look back, we weren't as pointed in our thinking on talent. We weren't as deliberate in making sure that that talent message was connected to full diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I have to say, with having leaders like Susan to take a significant role around our board and helping us to really see the opportunity and look at it in a way that made sure that everything we do is there to help support everyone, has made a really big difference. And so you've got, I think we've got the, yeah, there we go. We've got the subcommittee just up on the chart here. We instituted this work 3.5 years ago. And when I look back at it, everyone that is on there has been with us pretty much from the start. We've spent a lot of time coming up with strategies and approaches. Like, it's one thing to be intentional. It's another thing to have high impact, to make sure that intentionality turns into progress. And so I'm going to share with you some of the strategy and approach that we took and that we've stuck with. But I wanted to make sure that it was clear. Our subcommittee and our board structure has been a very important part of why we've turned the corner on this, why we spend so much time on this, and why it's important in everything we do, not just separate programming that focuses on helping women. We've also gone further in the last 18 months with Rita's help to have a much broader view of diversity, equity, and inclusion, so that every single program that we offer, all of the work that we do is done with a diversity lens. And so we're going to move into our next strat planning process starting in May. And I'm really looking forward to that, because we were intentional before. We've seen the impact of what that work can do. I'm really excited about what we can actually do in the next 5 years when we set our minds to it. So I do want to thank our subcommittee team, our board overall, and the employees that we have that are so committed to this work. And in particular, I want to thank Sonia specifically for being the quarterback of this work since the very start. Sonia, you've been amazing. You're a great executive, you're a great leader, and you're somebody that follows through with things right to the end. And I really do appreciate that about you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So thank you for that. So let's move to firstly goals, then we'll talk about the areas that we focused on. So when we first moved into the building, we had this brand new old building that we put together. It was beautiful. It was fantastic. And we started doing things, and it was very clear within the first 9 months or so that we were attracting everyone to our building. Our accelerator was kind of like a locker room. It just wasn't conducive to being open and welcoming to anyone that had an ambition. And so we spent deliberate effort in really changing how this facility was set up to receive anyone that really had a big idea that they had in their heart, so that they could help to unlock it here in the facility. So establishing a foundation was really around this idea that we need to help and attract women to come in and use our facilities, our services, and feel welcome to use those services. And that includes things like having coaches and mentors that are also women. That matters. And so we've done a lot of very deliberate things to provide an environment that's conducive to make that possible. And I think we've made a fair bit of progress on that. There's so much more that we have to do, but I feel like we've made good progress on that. Now, part of what I'm doing this afternoon is I'm going to take you through if you want to make change, you got to measure it. You got to keep track of it. You've got to celebrate the wins. You've got to be self-critical on the misses. And we really are. We do review the numbers that I'm going to share with you very deliberately on a quarterly basis. I'm going to take you through that in a moment. And then long term, when I think of things like the Shibu program, and you'll hear a lot about that this afternoon, that's the idea of longer range initiatives that involve the community. In this example, some incredibly inspiring women leaders that have decided to invest in the next generation of women leaders. We support it as a company. Of course, the Capital Angel Network is extremely active in it, but it's the kind of long-range programming that will have real impact beyond our own little borders of Ottawa, something that I think is a big idea that anyone could tap into. So let's move to the next one, Sam, please. So strategy is really around 4 areas. So promotion, I hope you see from our social media posting, we do a lot of very focused outward spotlighting of women in their progress and their journey of being entrepreneurs and business leaders. We spend a lot of time on that. And I would map that into the education piece as well. We do a lot of programming. We do a lot of events every year. And I hope you've noticed that when we do an event, we ensure the panelists are diverse. Like I can tell you as a leader, I do not go onto a panel unless I know the rest of the panelists have a very good distribution of diversity on the panel. Otherwise, I've got some amazing women leaders in my company that can easily fill in for me. So we make sure we're very, very specific on that, and that's important. So the education process, if you look at things like Accelerate OT, if you look at the CAV programming we had just before Christmas, if you, of course, we're in the center of International Women's Month. Last year we had over 60 events. You're going to see some incredible thought-leading presentations from inspiring women. This is really important. If you want to see things change, you need to ensure that that opportunity is available and that it's taken. And so I feel like we've made some progress there. You can always do more, but we've made some progress there. Then the last 2 are really around ensuring that you take that inspiration, that spark, and you connect women with other leaders, many women, to help support those ambitions, mentors, coaches, the ability to connect in networks to help those ideas take form. So Sonia is the architect behind this, and with the support of our female founders subcommittee, which I think has been just so dedicated to helping us shape this, a whole bunch of community support. Like, you can't do this kind of work unless you've got a lot of people engaged with you, and we do. So that's probably for me the most important reason why I feel like progress not only has been made, and I know we have to do a lot more, but our momentum is good, and there's a lot more that we will do going forward. All right, let's go through the numbers. And if I break down the areas that I'm going to share with you, I'm going to pick out a few of the areas that are on the slide here. Our entrepreneurship team. So I'm going to share some numbers related to Starter Company Plus, just to put a few of these on the board. Starter Company Plus is a program that we've done for many years that provides a grant to entrepreneurs of all walks of life. They've got an idea. We connect them with coaches, mentors. We celebrate the successes. So I'm going to share some of that. We'll go through venture team programming as well. That includes the pre-accelerator work that we do. We now call it Ignition. So I want to share some of the stats on that because I think you're going to find it fascinating how things have improved over time. We have our accelerator programming, our ScaleUp programming. We also did something with Digital Main Street that actually gave us some data that we weren't expecting. And I want you to really understand what we've been able to accomplish over time. And I feel like it's been really, really good for us because we've been able to apply those learnings into some of our subsequent programming that we have planned. Let's move to the next one, Sam, please. So firstly, the Ignition program. So next month, we'll be into our 14th cohort. So I see this as the first stage of our accelerator programming. It allows us to spot talent, frankly. It's a way to invite a wide set of participants. We usually have up to 18, 20 that we bring in through this programming. We get a lot of applications, but we try to keep it down to that number. And in there, we run a 10-week boot camp that provides all of the basics of getting a business started, whether it's looking at governance structures, IP strategies. We do things like business model canvas. It's a really good program. And when you look at the performance that we've had, so 38% of participants across the cohorts are either co-led by women founders, or there's a substantial presence on the C-suite of that organization. So 38%. 13 of 28 pitch competition awards. That's 46% for women. And then finally, 69%. We ran this program with the Ottawa Hospital pre-accelerator specifically tied to life sciences. and we had the highest turnout, which makes a lot of sense to me because the businesses that I've seen women come to the table with are very services centric. There is tendency and like complete solutions which in the world of data centric business, I think is going to play out very well for women leaders. So knowing that 69% in a life sciences cohort is extremely positive news, I think. Let's move to the next one. I think a flex program. So between the pre-accelerator or ignition and the accelerator program, we offer an approach to support because we can't pull everybody into the accelerator. So when you go through the pre-accelerator programming, again, we're talent spotting. We want to keep track of these companies. We've had a strong connection of flex companies that we work with post-ignition. So 51 are led by women, which is fantastic. And a third of all of the companies that we keep track of are now women. If you go back in time, it would have been well below 10%. So significant improvement of the coverage that we provide in terms of keeping in touch with women leaders. Let's go to the accelerator program. Currently, we have 9 accelerator tech companies, 29%. That is a significant number for us. It was extremely low even 4 years ago. And again, part of the change is we have a lot more women coaches and mentors. It's 50-50, which is a significant shift for us. We had a very, very small component of women leaders in our coaching and mentor program. So 52% increase, which is a significant increase over that period of time. Let's move to ScaleUp. Oh, these are the 9 companies, which all excellent companies. So just thrilled to have them part of our programming. Let's move to ScaleUp. 24 tech companies. We have 68 in total right now in our ScaleUp programming that we share this programming across Ontario with Mars and Communitech. So it's a very significant amount of program work that goes in there and an enormous amount of work. So a lot is expected and we put a lot in. And so knowing that we've been able to support 24 tech companies that are women-led. Now, this is women-led, either founded or senior roles. 7% only are the founders. So we have some work to do there for sure. But that's a question of pipeline development. So if you go back to the start, the ignition program, the flex program, making sure we're keeping track of how women are progressing through each one of those stages is how you move the dial. And to me, that's where the opportunity is. It's gratifying to see that we have companies coming up through the ranks this way, which is fantastic. And for whatever role we play with the coaches and mentors that we have, it's wonderful. I know it's an enormous amount of work for women because of the headwinds that they face. Let's move to the next one, please. Digital Main Street. So this one was a very short fuse program, in total about 15 months, that right in the center of the pandemic, we went out and we helped small companies, a lot of Main Street companies, to be able to future-proof their businesses by helping to fortify their operations with digital capability. So whether that's showing up in a search engine optimization kind of a strategy, or we help to support their e-commerce solution connected to their bricks and mortar approach, but strategically. It's one thing to attach a Shopify front end to your bricks and mortar business. It's a whole other thing to have that be part of your go-forward business model. So we did a lot of work. We had 300 students help us. We had 30 coaches and mentors help support. But when you look at it, the overwhelming number of leaders were women in these companies. And so we really didn't have a sense of that before we went in. But it was extremely important for us to learn because it's allowed us to adjust our programming strategy for how we provide training and some of the front-end entry points into the Invest Ottawa program. So we thought that you'd find it interesting. Hopefully you're seeing some of the progression that comes through on this. I think we have one more. Starter Company Plus. So this is a pretty important program for us because it actually covers a wide variety of different domain areas. It's not just tech, it's pretty much everything. 65% of the participants are, that the applicants that we have are women. 76% of the grants go to women leaders. 71% self-identify in terms of the actual participants as women, and $106,000 were deployed by March of 2022. This is how you make impact happen over time. You invest in it. You put your programming, money, and effort into it, and I feel we are. Always more that you can do, but we are making progress, and we're tracking our progress to make sure that we are. So with that, I think we're going to now move to the She Boot program. I'll pass it back to Sonia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for your leadership and for all of the support. It's now my pleasure to introduce two of my closest collaborators on an initiative I absolutely love working on, She Boot. I'm not even going to tell you what that is. And most people in this room likely know, many people online know what She Boot is because it's been a really impactful initiative. I also want to thank Erin Siegmiller, who's here with us in the audience, who has delivered so much of the programming together with the two ladies that I'm about to introduce to you. Please welcome Julia Elvidge and Jennifer Francis.
Thanks, Sonia. It's been an exciting couple of years running She Boot, co-founded with Julia and Sonia. And I just want to talk for a second about the purpose of She Boot. So you heard some of the numbers this morning from Sonia. Less than 3% of funding goes to women founders. And you heard from Mike that the ScaleUp program is the least diverse of the programs at Invest Ottawa. And there's a strong relationship between these things because to grow a company, you need money. It's really hard to grow companies without funding, particularly tech companies. So we founded She Boot in order to address that problem. And we were looking at both sides of the issue. We need more women on the funding side of the table because we know when there's more women funders, then more women founders get funded. And we need to help the women founders get that funding. So where to find the funding, how to find the funding, how to pitch to an all-male room, because you're all going to experience that as a woman founder if you're trying to raise money. So going through all of those things, so we came up with the idea of running She Boot. And we want to take you through a little bit of how that's gone. So starting with applications. So I've heard in my career that, you know, one of the reasons that women don't get that much funding is there just aren't that many women founders. Well, let me tell you, we had 127 applicants for the program last year. That was up over 2.5 times from the year before. The founders are out there. They're just not getting the funding. So we also wanted to look at the, as I said, at the funder issue. So the first year we thought, can we find 10 women who are willing to put in $10,000 each to help fund the top companies from the She Boot program? And we did that. And then last year, Julia said, can't we double that? I think we can double that. And we did. And we got 20 women putting in $10,000 each for a total purse of $200,000 for the 2021 She Boot program.
I was, excuse me, I was shaking a little bit at 15, whether we'd make it to 20, but we did.
Yeah, and then we had an additional $100K in non-dilutive funding for a total of $300K funding that went to the companies that came into the program.
So in the end, we managed to get 10 companies through in 2020, 10 women-led firms. And the women had to have some ownership as well as be at the C level of those corporations to count. 10 ran through the first year in 2020, and we got another 9 women-led firms in 2021. We were able in 2021 to give away 3 prizes, 2 top pitch prizes worth $150K for the grand prize and $50K for the second prize, as well as having a crowd favorite. So let's talk about some of those wins.
Next slide. So in terms of the success of the program, so we had the 2 winners from the 2020 program. So Vault, who got $50K in non-dilutive funding, and Heirloom, $150K of funding as the winner of the She Boot 2020 program. Heirloom is now Halu, think. Hello.
Mhm.
They've now raised $1.85 million for their company and are in the process of scaling out. Vault is now in market with a contract with Boehringer Ingelheim. HireFast got acquired for a 7-figure deal this past year, and Treehouse Medical won the Scotiabank National Mom Pitch, so for additional funding there.
And FanSaves, another 2020 company further down the list there, just raised $250K. The 2021 companies are already raising now too. So really they finished at the end of October, and we're seeing the raises that we can talk about because it's still early. That, you know, Fortress Legal brought in $1 million right after Sheboot closed. Floca, which was the second prize winner in 2021, brought in $500K. And then Grocer, the $150K winner, is for the Sheboot Grand Prize, is currently in the midst of another round. So this is really, really exciting. I expect, and I really was kind of doing math in my head really quickly, that just of these companies, not any new companies, I think these companies are going to be well over 8 million by the end of the year in terms of the money they've raised since they were in the Sheboot program. That's fantastic news. And we do have some, and unfortunately, cohort only runs once a year. Maybe someday we'll be able to change that, but it only runs once a year. So companies like Learn Experts and Hyperion are the two mentions at the bottom there. Other very strong women founders that got support from women in the Sheboot program, not directly as part of the program. But thank you. This has been a great program, and we've really enjoyed every aspect of it. Most of this program is women-led, women leaders providing all their time on a volunteer basis with great support from Capital Angel Network and Invest Ottawa. But there's a huge amount of volunteer work. And one of the big changes this year is we're looking to make this sustainable going forward. We're looking to secure additional funding and really grow this going forward until it's not needed anymore, which I suspect is not soon. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I just want to say on the additional women outside of Sheboot that raised funding, there is a direct correlation since we started Sheboot. We've seen the membership of Capital Angel Network is almost a quarter women now. When I first joined Capital Angel Network, there were 2 women. So we're now at 25% of the group is women. A third of the board at Capital Angel Network is now women. So a major increase as well. And we've seen substantially more women entrepreneurs apply to Capital Angel Network and get funded by Capital Angel Network as a result of the shift in our numbers. So yeah, a lot of work to do, but a good start. And we will be continuing. So we'll be doing the call for applications for the 2022 cohort of Sheboot in April. And if anyone is interested, Julia mentioned that this is a volunteer-driven program. If you would like to join us as a coach, as a mentor, as a trainer, and most importantly, or as importantly, as an investor for 2022, then you can come and see Sonia, Julia, or I about getting involved in the 2022 program.
Well, and pitch for the breakfast tomorrow morning, because that is about angel investing if you're interested in just understanding more about it. 8 a.m. tomorrow, virtual.
Yeah, and hopefully in a couple of years, we'll have an Ottawa-based woman founder who's going public on the TSX. But tomorrow we'll hear from Judy Hess from out west who just did that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Amazing outcomes already just 18 months in, and International Women's Week loves to celebrate those wins. Long way to go. We also want to create lots of opportunity and even greater impact. And we have a surprise. We have an announcement coming from my friend Erin Siegmiller, our manager of early stage programming here at Invest Ottawa. Just wait.
Great. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, ladies. So very excited to be here today. As we discussed, we are here to help women grow. And the only way to grow is to get more revenue, more sales, more customers. So we want to see women cross that line, get into the accelerator, be eligible for programs like Sheboot. And that is why we're announcing IO Traction for Women Tech Founders. So 10 founders, $10,000 and 10 weeks to traction. Now, this includes hands-on workshops such as customer personas and customer success, as well as growth modeling and growth hacking, as well as that 10K to go towards their growth strategy and reach more customers and get more sales. And a special additional bonus is Sarah Lacy, our keynote leader, has thrown in the new media masterclasses for each of the participants. So if you are a woman founder based out of Ottawa, working on a tech product, tech or tech enabled, and you're ready to get that product in the hands of excited customers, please reach out to us. Reach out if you have any questions at all. We'll be accepting applications until March 21st, and we're really excited to launch this later in the spring. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Erin. We are running a little bit behind because there's so much great content and so many important things to talk about. Invest Ottawa's governance and operations, you will all know that we have launched guidelines, women guidelines, gender diversity guidelines on our website. We made certain commitments 3 years, almost 4 years ago now. The slide that you see here really captures our internal progress. We knew the progress had to start inside our organization and work outward. And I just want to highlight a couple of really important things. 38% of our directors today are women, and we actually are launching a new recruitment for the directors. So stay tuned and watch for that coming. 61% of our IO Bayview team are women, and at the exec level, just before my good friend Heidi Halver went to a startup and a scale-up called Shiny Docs, we were 43%. Right now, we're 33%, and our extended leadership team is 43% self-identified women. And 50% of the mentors and advisors that we work with now at Invest Ottawa are women. And just to put this into context, the leap forward that Nick and his team have made on that front, it was 10% in 2017. So long way to go. It is always an iterative process, and we're working together as a team and with our community on those numbers. And I think with that, I just want to say our journey continues. A long way to go. We couldn't do it without you. And you know, today is really all about propelling women founders forward. And I'm going to invite Steph Reed to come up and introduce our first keynote session. Thank you, Steph.
Up next, we have our Fireside chat to celebrate the last day of Black History Month with a power duo. Get ready for inspiration and actionable opportunities to create a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive ecosystem where Black women founders and entrepreneurs from all walks of life can thrive. It is with absolute pleasure to continue this impactful day by welcoming Rosey Edeh, CTV Live morning anchor, CEO, Misha Muse Media.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I always want to say good morning because I work so early in the morning, and I'm a co-host at CTV Morning Live, and it's such a pleasure to be here with each and every one of you this afternoon. This is so exciting. Let me just grab a seat here. We don't have the fireside, but we've got the warmth of everybody here, which is absolutely perfect. We're going to have a great chat. And before I bring on our guest who is joining us remotely, I just want to sing a little bit of her praises. It's such an honor to welcome to our fireside chat Regina Gwynn. And what a dynamic woman she is. Here's some of her accomplishments. And let me just rattle them off here. And I see you there, Regina. Hi. Hi. Hi, Regina. Okay, so this is really exciting here. Regina is an accomplished and recognized leader in tech entrepreneurship, industry, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. She's an ideal and inspirational role model to help us celebrate the final day of Black History Month and launch the F Factor in our International Women's Week event dedicated to fueling women founders. So just to give our audience a glimpse of your achievements, Regina, here we go. Regina is an award-winning serial entrepreneur, a leader who has been named one of the top 100 most powerful women by Entrepreneur magazine, and top 10 women in tech by Essence magazine, an advisor, speaker, angel, and LP investor. Yes, thank you very much. And the co-founder of Black Women Talk Tech, And I also know, Regina, that you just wrapped up a successful conference, Face of a Founder, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But I just wanted to welcome you to our fireside chat, and maybe you could say hello to everyone.
Hello, hello. Thank you all for having me. So excited to support the conversation. I was listening in on some of the announcements, and there's lots of really good energy and momentum coming into 2022 around women founders. So it's about time.
Yes, it is. And it's so important to have that good energy, to have that positivity moving forward, because we know that it is an uphill battle for women entrepreneurs, and particularly in tech. But it's there. The opportunities are being made by women, and there's space being made by men as well. So, Regina, we wanted to talk to you first off. I just want to get a little bit of a background of your personal story. I think we all want to know, like, wait a minute, how'd you get all these wonderful accolades and you're just a serial entrepreneur? Where did that all come from?
Oh boy. Well, my dad was an entrepreneur and his dad was an entrepreneur. So I actually grew up and was blessed to grow up around small business owners and entrepreneurs. So I knew I wanted to be a business owner, but definitely didn't know like what. I went through like high school, college, went to business school, and knew I wanted to start something. Still just didn't know what it was until I happened upon an idea with my former business partner around the beauty experience for women of color. And it prompted us to think about how to use on-demand technologies like Uber and Fresh Direct. And, so many apps had come onto the market that allowed you to push a button and your car comes to you or your groceries come to you. So why not be able to push a button and have your stylist come to you? So I actually launched one of the first on-demand, on-location beauty booking apps for women of color in 2013. So that was my first foray into the tech industry. It was a company called Trust Noir. And we started off in Philadelphia. We expanded to New York City. We were also covering Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and Dallas, Texas. We were a part of the first Google for Entrepreneurs cohort for Black founders. We were also a part of Backstage Capital's accelerator program. So did all these things. And yet, the challenges were still significant. Being a non-technical founder, finding the right access to technical talent, finding the right mentors and advisors to navigate. I had no idea what a tech stack was. I had no idea what a cap table and an MVP, like I did not know any of it. And when I met my co-founders for Black Women Talk Tech, we were in the same boat, working on completely different startups, but still having the exact same problems. And so we recognized if we were having these issues, could there be other women having these same problems? And indeed they were. And that prompted us to create Black Women Talk Tech in 2017, providing access to building billion-dollar businesses for entrepreneurs of color.
Okay, Regina, I wanted to ask you this. Let's unpack this a little bit more with Trust Noir. That's your first foray. That's your first startup in 2013. Didn't know much about tech and startups. How many times would you say you fell down and had to get back up again?
Publicly failed. Publicly, awkwardly, embarrassingly failed several times, several times, and, like I said before, I thought I had the network. I went to business school and, went to the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern, and like, I should have all of it together. No.
Good school, right?
Nope. And I mean, I think it entrepreneurship humbles you in general, right? Most businesses will fail. And, there's something to be said about timing, but there's also something to be said about the network. If you think about, some of the stats that were shared, 3% of venture funding going to women entrepreneurs. Here in the US, it's less than 1% goes to Black and Brown founders together, right? So on average, that translates to around $42,000 that might go to a Black woman in venture funding, as opposed to 1.4 million on average goes to our mainstream male counterparts. And so there were lots of failures, a lot of wins, but a lot of learning in terms of, what does it take to move the needle. How do you get from 100,000 revenue to $1 million in revenue? How do you get from $1 million to 10 million? How do you get from 100 million in revenue to creating $1 billion business? Those are the things that we unlock in Black Women Talk Tech.
The unicorn, $1 billion business. Regina, can you talk about this? Why you're so passionate about propelling the growth of Black women founders and entrepreneurs from every walk of life?
For sure. So when you empower a woman, you empower a community. We have seen the power of one founder getting her check, getting that first investor check at our very first conference. The very first conference we held in 2017, a founder there received investment from an investor that had come to that conference. And that was in February of that year. By the end of the year, she was making 7-figure revenue. And 2 years later was raising one of the largest Series A rounds for a Black woman founder. So there is impact here that's bigger than me. And I'm excited to be a part of that. But more importantly, I'm excited about building generational wealth for families, building the GDP, the opportunity to expand, economic freedom for, just for communities across the country. There's something very powerful in that, creating jobs, creating opportunities, and creating lasting, sustainable changes in lifting, in changing socioeconomic class. And so, for me, I get excited because it's such an untapped opportunity. And yet it is a market, it is an experience that I know very well. And I know it very intimately because I am a founder, because I do know the struggle, I do know that path. And so it allows me to be able to navigate and advocate in a way that might be different than other people.
So I have just a little bit of information here. Black women are building and growing businesses faster than any other segment, and yet receive less than 1% of venture capital funding. What is Black Women Talk Tech doing to change that?
Yes, so the stats are pretty disheartening, but there is, again, a lot of opportunity. At Black Women Talk Tech, we focus on 3 pillars: education. Half the battle is just knowing, right? You don't know what you don't know, and so you don't know how to fix it. And so we focus a lot of education during our summits and our conferences. So as you mentioned, we just wrapped up our Face of a Founder Summit last Thursday, a free digital event that focuses on finance and fundraising. How do you think about forecasting? How do you think about tax benefits? How do you think about the financial health of your business and assessing that? We're giving you the tools to help apply meaningful changes to your business. And that piece in and of itself can be transformative. Another pillar is amplifying. So we also like to just tell the stories of women who are doing it. This is not a pipeline issue. This is not to say that, that we aren't seeing huge success. We have featured Black women who are running billion-dollar startups at this very moment. There are Black women like Julia Collins, who ran Zoom Pizza, which was $1 billion valued startup back in 2019. We've also had Dr. Toyin Ajayi, who runs City Block Health, which is $1 billion valued startup. These women do exist, and we do need to see them. We need to hear their stories. We need to be exposed to the processes that they went through in order to be able to know that it is in fact possible. And then the last thing that is the most important part is the money. The best way to empower a Black woman is to cut her a check. That is essentially what we try to do by putting the right people in the room, working with the right investors and shareholders that will essentially see that the opportunity is for them. It behooves them to be in the building in order to, see economic and financial returns by betting on Black women.
Regina, what's your vision for Black Women Talk Tech? What's your grand vision?
So our grand vision is, in fact, to create communities of wealth, right? So not only is it Black Women Talk Tech, but we also have Black Men Talk Tech. Not only is there Black Men Talk Tech, but we also have Black Students Talk Tech, which is an HBCU initiative for those college students being exposed to entrepreneurship and technology. And not only is it Black students talk tech, but it's Black kids talk tech. Starting the conversations around entrepreneurship at the earliest age possible allows us to continue to refine and to iterate and to fail, right? Until as you continue to fail forward and ultimately find your lane, right? And so this idea of creating communities of learning and communities of understanding is our long-term vision.
What are some of the most exciting developments that you've seen through your work with Black Women Talk Tech? I really want to unpack this. This is your big baby right now, so I want to unpack it a little bit further.
Yeah, so it's been a crazy couple of years. Let me start there. The things that we originally envisioned for the organization are very different now than, now going on almost 3 years ago. COVID has turned the world upside down, and it's forced us to rethink how we connect and engage with our community. Clearly, we've had to do a lot more online than we would have liked. And, being able to move out of the digital space and back in person is something that we are extremely excited about. We are coming back in person on June 16th and 17th in New York City. So definitely get ready for Roadmap to Billions 6th annual conference. But also I am excited about the growth of the entrepreneur community. When we first started in 2017 and when I first started in 2013, you didn't hear about founders raising $100 million, $300 million, $400 million. Like, you just didn't even hear of it. And now you hear about it more often. You hear about exits. You hear about, more and more actual billion-dollar valued startups. And that in and of itself is a proof point, right? We're at an inflection point where, the work has been put in. And then we've been plugging away and plugging away and plugging away. And now we're starting to see the fruit of that labor, right? And we're only just getting started. We're only just starting to scratch that surface. And it's extremely exciting that just like now, there used to be articles that were like, oh, there's only 20 Black women that have raised $1 million in funding. Like, you don't even hear those articles anymore because so many Black women have raised. So it's not a thing to be the 70th Black woman to raise $1 million. So to me that's to normalize, right? To change the idea of what a founder looks like. It's not always a white guy in a hoodie from Harvard and Stanford. You can actually be a woman from Ottawa, right? You can be a woman from Detroit, Michigan. You can be a woman from Durham, North Carolina, and run $1 billion business. And it's looked at just the same as any other person for any other background. That is exciting to me.
How did the pandemic affect you? At times, personally, I felt like paralyzed. It was difficult to navigate that world at times during some lockdowns, emotionally and even creatively. Things felt a bit stifled at times. It felt like the economy had ground to a halt. We may never get out of it. And I'm just wondering if you can give us a personal account of how you navigated your way through the past 20 months.
Whew. This pandemic has been such a deep exploration in like who it is to be Regina Gwynn. Like, I feel as if we had so much time on our hands, and sometimes having so much time on your hands can be a good and a bad thing, right? Clearly, I won't say clearly, but unfortunately, I lost people in my family and within my network.
I'm so sorry.
No problem. I mean, unfortunately, like almost 1 million people have died in the U.S. Due to COVID, and so you'd be hard pressed to find someone who didn't know someone that lost someone. So it's a frustrating experience. I was angry, I was frustrated, I was annoyed. And then when I also think about the businesses that closed, that are no longer here because of the fact that, if you don't get a friends and family round, okay, if you don't get access to that initial funding, you use revenue, right? You use customers and revenue to power your business. And when that's taken away, then what do you do? This was the part that was also really frustrating because, entrepreneurs, Black women, we're constantly resourceful. We're constantly, making $1 out of 15 cents. We're navigating. And even when like every rug is pulled out, we're still trying to continue to figure it out. And the pandemic just said, look, no. And so, I think it allowed me to really stop, assess what was important to me. It also allowed me to spend time doing things that I hadn't done before, like just be. Sometimes you're always on the run, you're always on the go. Taking that time to just really stop and assess was helpful for me. I was able to get back into reading, which I love to do, and just never really had a lot of time to finish books. So that part was nice. But it also allowed us to see what was going on globally. Everyone was experiencing this pandemic roughly at the same time. And so it forced us to look at, what was our human experience and how did it mirror human experiences around the world? That was really powerful.
Well, tomorrow here in Ontario, yay, no more vaccine passport. So things are going to be opening up quite broadly for us. It's a new thing. Over the past couple of years, it's been really locked down, and it looks like we're finally coming out of it. I'm wondering about you, Women Talk Tech. What are some of the things that you've learned over the past 20 months during these challenging times that gives you, I would say, hope for the future of tech, for the future of women and women entrepreneurs?
Something that I think gives us hope is the community itself. How often we received requests that, to offer assistance, to offer support. The organizations, our partners, our allies, so many people have reached out to recognize that A, there's a serious problem happening here, and B, I can help fix it. It's very easy to point out the problems. That is the easiest thing to do. But it's a little more challenging to actually offer up solutions and to offer up actually the teeth that can actually put forth meaningful change. And so coming out of the pandemic, the emails and the conversations and the phone calls that we've had prepare us for, so much more opportunity coming into this year. So, how are we thinking about access? How are we thinking about resources? How are we thinking about capacity building? And also, how are we thinking specifically about technical talent? I will double click on the tech piece because you can have a great idea. And if your product is not designed well, it is for nothing. We have to that is the delta that we have to figure out in order to build meaningful products that investors will invest in and that also, buyers will buy.
What action do you think is needed to address this investment challenge and put more capital in the hands of Black women, founders, and other entrepreneurs from every walk of life? I mean, what are some of the concrete things that we need to do or actions that we need to see so that things can change?
I would start with the hairy, uncomfortable conversation around unconscious bias, right? So, when we think about who we are naturally inclined to meet with, who we're naturally inclined to have those casual conversations, it is those conversations that build trust, build relationship, and ultimately build the pipeline towards actually landing an investment. The challenge that we've had is this whole pattern recognition, right? So you see a successful founder and he looks like this. And you see hundreds of those successful founders and they all look like this. And their network looks like that. Until we can change what this looks like, and again, going back to that, normalizing that it doesn't have to look like this, it could look like that over there, and that it can still be successful. We have to talk about the why. We know what it is, but we also need to talk about the why is it, and how are we consciously moving past that. it's very easy just to stay in your comfortable network. It's easy to stay in your comfortable sphere of influence. But do we want to make money or not? I like money. I'll put both my hands up.
Me too.
And, so how, if we want to actually expand our influence and expand the pie, right? How are we diving into these untapped markets where the profitability and the revenue could be outsized with the right investment? And so again, savvy, smart investors would do well to get outside of their comfort zone and to get outside of that comfortable pattern recognition network.
Okay, so getting the investors outside of their comfortable pattern, getting them to see some of their unconscious bias. What about the founders, those who are looking for capital? Would it benefit them to also learn to navigate that world that is male dominated, and maybe learn the language or learn some of the tricks of the trade, if you will, that many of those male investors sort of carry themselves in a certain way, sort of speak in a certain language? Does it benefit a female founder to learn that, or is it necessary, or maybe both, to, as you just said, start to reteach that unconscious bias, take that out, and then but also teach women how to learn that language?
Well, for sure. I definitely believe that, in order to successfully navigate the tech ecosystem, you're going to have to know the tricks of the trade. You're going to have to know the jargon. You're going to have to understand who the stakeholders are. And, there's nothing wrong with that, and again, entrepreneurship is hard. You're going to get no's, whether they come from, white investors, Black investors, Asian investors, Latino investors. Like, you're going to get no's like across the board. So, but knowing your story, knowing your numbers, knowing your market size and your market opportunity, knowing your traction and your product market fit sets you up to win, right? The only thing you can control is your ability to go and put your business forth in the best light possible. And I think, just as like a little bit of a tangent, we also have to start thinking outside of venture. So venture money is not the only money in town. It's sexy, it's spectacular, but it's not the only money. It's only 1% of total of all the types of financial products out in the market. So how are we thinking about crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, loans, credit cards, grants, public-private partnerships, sponsorship? Like, there's lots of other ways to build your business. And I think we have to make sure that we continue to think about those alternative methods to fundraising, because oftentimes those are non-dilutive, and that'll allow you to keep your business much longer and be in a much better state to negotiate when you do want to do an equity raise.
I feel like there could be some women in here who just heard you mention that, venture capital is not the only means of attaining that investment. Can you unpack that a little bit more for us about the other means and ways in which you can go about attaining capital?
Sure. So at Black Women Talk Tech, we definitely advocate and promote all streams of funding. So, venture is, of course, some of the, you can have larger amounts of money up front. So there's definitely pros and cons to it. However, it's not the only money available. I always recommend all founders, all entrepreneurs, to have good credit, because, SBA loans are relatively easy to get if you have good credit. And they also can give you up to, I think, $500,000. So, there are other, depending on your stage, depending on your industry, depending on the type of business that you're running, there's lots of ways to get money outside of venture. We work with Republic.co, which is an equity crowdfunding platform. This allows for, similar to a traditional crowdfunding, like a GoFundMe or, some other type of company of that nature. Equity crowdfunding allows the individual to get a small, tiny fraction of your business. So it is an equity raise, but you're not raising from, individual VCs. You're raising from individual, like, accredited investors. So that's yet again, I've seen people raise $5 million, $10 million on an equity crowdfunding site, and and allow themselves to again keep more of their equity. So these equity crowdfunding raises are much smaller. VCs are going to want 5%, 10%, 15% of your business. When you're giving away 15% at a seed round, you won't have any money, you won't have any equity left by the time you reach Series A, B, C. So it's just a trade-off. It's and there's different levels of work involved, right? You're going to work at this money regardless. So depending on how you want to work while continuing to work on your business, because fundraising is also a full-time focus. It's very hard to continue to build traction and expand on your company while running a fundraising campaign. So again, there's so many trade-offs. I can talk a lot about fundraising.
Okay, I've got one more question for you before we open it up to the audience. And here you are, co-founder of Black Women Talk Tech. Tres Noir was your first startup back in 2013. I'm wondering, what is your leadership style?
My leadership style, I'm not a micromanager. Let me start there. I am definitely not a micromanager. I spend a lot of time in the recruiting and the hiring process to find someone that I think is capable. If I have hired you, then that means I expect you and feel confident in your ability to run the business, right? Or to run whatever category, that you've been hired to do. And so I like to establish trust early. So that you can go and run with particular projects, and that I know that these projects are being addressed and that they're being done well and up to my standard. And so I think that my biggest focus as a leader is to provide the level of support to help you win. What resources do you need? What tools, what products, what budget do you need to win? You let me know, and I will try to make that happen in the background. But it is up to you to execute. I'm definitely a big proponent of flawless execution. Not everyone can be the ideas person. You actually need someone that can be an operator and actually get ish done.
So my background is I came from the world of sport, represented Canada in the Olympics, and I can tell you this: you'd be a great coach. Yeah, you'd be a great Olympic coach too, because you give somebody that responsibility and you expect to see results because you infuse them with that confidence. That's what it sounds like, the kind of leader that you are. Regina, Gwynn, okay, it's been amazing talking to you. I could just take up all your time and just focus on you and ask you a million questions, but you know what? We've got an incredible audience here that's been listening so attentively. So we want to just open it up and see if there are any questions for you from the audience. So Sonia, you want to take it away? Oh, there we go. Maybe just give it a second. If you popped it on, it usually takes like a second to work. We're just having a little mic technical difficulty, Regina.
All good.
Okay, there we go.
Good.
There we go.
There
Wonderful.
she is.
Hi, Regina. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. It's great to welcome you back. And I am the official question asker alongside Rosey today. My first question for you is, what advice would you give your younger self, knowing everything you do right now?
Oof. Start earlier. I think the thing I would, if I were to give myself any advice, it would be to get out of my head, because I overthink everything, and just start. I tell everyone, the best advice I get to give to every entrepreneur, those that are thinking about starting a business: get started. Don't think and try to figure out everything. The first product of the first MVP I had for Tres Noir looked terrible. It was like, it was a website with like this humongous logo, and it just looked really bad, but at least it was out there. It was out in the market, and we could iterate and refine it and get customer feedback and make the second version better, and the third release was better, and the fourth release was better, but at least it was out there. So get started. Don't wait. Don't pass go.
Just do it. I love it. Awesome. We do invite questions via the Hopin platform. Our team is texting them to me, so please feel free to share. We have time for a couple. Regina, I want to know about your greatest lesson learned and how you have applied it.
Well, okay. So the greatest lesson learned, and this is something I actually learned early on in my corporate America career, and that now again influences my leadership style, is being set up to win, right? There were a few times in corporate America where, I did not believe that my boss or, just that my team set me up properly to win, right? So, whether that means that I had the right development or that I had the right tools, or whether I understood the assignment, whether I understood the projects that I was working on. I think that learning that lesson painfully has stayed with me, for the rest of my career, such that I make sure that my team is set up to win. I make sure that people who report to me have all the resources, because if I do give you all the resources and we still have performance issues, then I'm able to clearly understand kind of where do we need to triage, where do we need to troubleshoot, right? So I would definitely say knowing your strengths and weaknesses, but also truly developing those weaknesses and providing areas of development it's key. Solely resting on your laurels, solely resting on your strengths won't build you holistically as a leader and as an entrepreneur.
Amazing actionable insight. And that is really at the heart of International Women's Week. We have a couple of questions rolling through. What skills do you believe that you acquired that really were fundamental in helping you to get to where you are today?
Number one, having a thick skin. You are going to get so many no's. You're going to get so many no's. Having a thick skin, knowing that it's not personal, even when the no's are personal, it's still not personal because they don't know you. They don't really know who you are. That has been extremely important. That you're solely focused on the business, and understanding how you show up in the business for sure, but it is business. So having a thick skin, I think, is extremely important. Being resourceful is also key to being a successful entrepreneur. Someone's going to tell you it has to be done this particular way, and you're going to find another way to do it. The end, right? Because you may not have the skill set, or you may not have the tools to take that particular approach. Doesn't mean it cannot be done. My dad always used to say, there's more than one way to skin a cat. We're from the South, so you've got to be able to have a workaround, to find a plan B, to execute on a plan C, D, and E, and know how to do your resources. Yes, Google is your friend, but how are you using Google to get to the right information and to provide, the right resources and identify the right opportunities? It definitely takes a level of resourcefulness.
Amazing. Our last question from the audience is, how have you built such a strong resilience muscle? And boy, have we needed it during this pandemic. So you are truly a role model.
Yes, resilience is so key. I think remembering my why is important to be resilient. Remembering that the work that I do, it does have an impact. That there is a long tail to this is extremely important to just remember that it's bigger than me. And there's so many things that I'm grateful for. If I think about where I've started to where I am now, I am very grateful for that journey. And if I would have started here back in 2013, I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't know how to act. I wouldn't know how to navigate and go from step one to step two. If you would have told me 7 years, is it 7 years? What's it? 9 years ago. If you would have told me 9 years ago in 2013 that I'd be doing this now, I would not have believed you. I would not have believed you. So I do think that the journey allows for a level of wisdom and a level of understanding that I am grateful for. And that gratefulness does allow me to at least try to be resilient as much as I can. And then there's days where you just sit in the dark.
We love the journey concept, and it has just been a privilege to have you on our virtual stage today. You know, we had Isosa Johnson, your co-founder for Black Women Talk Tech, in the fall. So the biggest question I have for you is, when are you coming to Ottawa? We need you here. We need you here. We want Black Women Talk Tech here. I know you're serving founders in Toronto, so you'll be hearing from us. Trust me.
Yes, for sure. Would love to come. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Regina and Rosey. Thank you. It is always a pleasure to collaborate with you. Thank you for coming back to us and being with us at Bayview Yards.
It's been great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Regina.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, everyone. This is your first break. It's not going to be quite 5 minutes because we've got an amazing scale-up panel. We're going to get started in 3 minutes. So we're going to get Lise ready to rock the stage with the founders from our amazing scale-ups. Come back in 3. Thanks, everyone.
Winterland, tell me all your secrets. Fill me in on your wildest moments. Colored trees, your yellow leaves move me. Dancing roofs, your painted red shakes the room. When I get there, I'll let my feet roll. When I get there, I'll break in your arms, I'll lose control. When I get there, I'll know the answer. Let me know when I get closer. Winterland, you're my sailing ship. Guide me in when you head for your trip. Right out of this wicked black and into bright sand. Straight towards the warm sun and into his hands. When I get there, I'll let my feet roll. When I get there, I'll break in your arms, I'll lose control. When I get there, I'll know the answer. Let me know when I get closer. Winterland, whisper in my ear, make my troubles all disappear. Way beyond this wicked black, I'll feel the sunset. Right under the warm sun and in his hands. When I get there, I'll let my feet roll. When I get there, I'll break in your arms, I'll lose control. When I get there, I'll know the answer. Let me know when I get closer. When I get closer. Let me know when I get closer. Open up the sky for me. When you say I'll dig much deeper, I'll shout. Let me know when I get closer. Open up the sky for me. When you say I'll dig much deeper, I will shout. When I get there, I'll know the answer. Let me know when I get closer. deeper I will shout. Let
All right, welcome back. I absolutely love that video. It was produced by Extremeline, incredible, talented organization that does some great work for us. I'm going to bring our audience back together. Everyone is so excited to be networking after this long stretch where we were apart or forced to limit our contact to virtual and on screen. Seeing everyone here in person is absolutely amazing. As we get everyone back together here at Bayview, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Lise Buetel, who is our director of the ScaleUp program here at Invest Ottawa. We scooped her away from SDTC, and she's doing a marvelous job, and she is going to lead us off today in terms of our women founders who are scaling successfully and globally. Get ready for actionable insight, because this is it. Welcome, Lise.
Thank you so much, Sonia. As Sonia mentioned, my name is Lise Buetel, and I'm the director of the ScaleUp program, which is really befitting because this is, in fact, the ScaleUp panel. So I wanted to pick up on a thread Susan mentioned earlier, the fact that we're kind of unpracticed around, being in person and socializing. And it reminded me of this comic strip by Charlie Brown and Snoopy, where Charlie Brown says, "Snoopy, it's too peoply out there. I think I'm just going to stay in bed." But I think today is like just the perfect amount of peoply. So anyways, I'm joined by Erin Kelly on stage. And then we are joined by the other panelists online. I've been told it's a super seamless process. And last week, actually, the panelists and I got together and we all agreed that we would be having an open-hearted, open-minded kind of, real conversation today about the challenges of leading, founding, being an entrepreneur in a scaling company, a company that is growing its employees, that is raising funding, that is ultimately looking to attract top talent. So that's kind of going to be the ilk of the panel for today. And can't do two things at once here, apparently. I really am more than honored, in fact, chuffed to be here today moderating this super impressive group of women who are so inspiring. And so without further ado, I would like to do the introductions. So I'm joined remotely by Nuha Siddiqui, who is the co-founder and CEO of Earthost. She's joining us from Toronto. She started this company 5 years ago as a school project with her classmates at U of T. And since then, basically, this company has been named one of the top fastest growing clean tech companies. And Nuha herself has recently been recognized by Rotman as one of the youngest leaders to watch. Also joined, welcome Kira Torku from Ascend Compliance. She is the Chief People Officer there, and she has really been instrumental in successfully building a vibrant, inclusive, diverse culture at Ascend Compliant, which has had a meteoric rise and which now is more than 800 employees. Earlier this year, Ascend Compliant raised $350 million US at a valuation of $1 billion. So if you didn't believe in unicorns before, you certainly should now. And Kira has been the sole female leader up until recently on the executive team at Ascend Compliant. So she will share that experience with us. We're joined by Catherine Atkinson, who is the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder at Can Immunize. And if you think over the last 2 odd years that this whole COVID thing has worn us all down, imagine having a solution, a digital solution that is tracking vaccines. Well, that's Can Immunize, and that is Catherine at the helm. And so it's pretty impressive stuff. And in addition to that, Catherine is a published expert in mobile technology and immunization. She's also a PhD candidate focused on improving immunization systems within digital technology. And I personally am wondering if she ever sleeps, but she looks pretty fresh today. And finally, I'm joined here on stage by Erin Kelly, who is the co-founder and president of Advanced Symbolics. Erin is a published author with 2 books and many other papers on artificial intelligence, AI, and analytics that really focus on business and society. Erin is 25 Women to Watch in Canada. She was named to that list in 2020 and has also been named to the Top 40 Under 40 Award. So a really illustrious, impressive panel. And what I'd like to do now is just throw it over to have each of the panelists introduce themselves in their own words, perhaps provide the quick elevator pitch of their companies, and maybe provide a bit of background on maybe what was the biggest defining moment to date in their career. So Erin, I'm going to throw it over to you first.
Still, okay, is it working now? I just want to clarify that the 40 under 40 was a while ago. Okay, so I think I might have to remove that from the bio. Anyway, hello everyone, and great to see everybody here in person. I was actually saying to Lise just before that, I went to CES in January, like a 10,000 person conference. It was fabulous, tons of business. I'll tell you a little bit about that later. The opportunity showing up to things in person right now is amazing because nobody else is going out to conferences, and the kind of deal flow is incredible. But anyway, I'm glad to be here in person. I've been going to conferences for a while now. My company is Advanced Symbolics. We're an AI. It's an AI for market research. So it's an AI that goes out and is able to create randomized, controlled, representative samples of any population, any target market on social media for the purposes of doing statistical research automatically. So it pops it up immediately. You want to find out how people feel in Ukraine. What do teachers think versus men versus women versus people who are Ukrainian versus non-Ukrainian? It'll tell you immediately how many people think we need to go to war, how many people think we just need to send money, how many people think we should not do anything. It all works out and it's all perfectly statistically valid. So it was research that came out of the University of Ottawa. We commercialized it, got the patents on it, and that's it. And now we're looking to go. We have, right now, it's a product that does require a lot of training. But in September, we're working on a version that won't require any of that. And it'll be literally like a Google site. You go on and you get all your statistical research. So that's when the product will become GA later this year.
Amazing. Thank you, Erin. And how about you, Kira, from Ascent Compliance?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm a bit jealous, Erin, being in the space there, and I'm still here in my basement, about 5 kilometers away. So hopefully I'll be able to be in a space sometime soon. My name is Kira Torco, and I'm the Chief People Officer at Ascent Compliance. Ascent is an Ottawa headquartered company with offices globally that has just topped, I think, Lise, you mentioned 800 as of last week. We were just over 900 new team members around the globe, which has been a pretty amazing journey to be part of. And so our organization supports the transparency and sustainability of companies' supply chains. So we support, large organizations and making sure they understand what's in their supply chains, both from a product standpoint, but also from a social standpoint. Do you see, is there risk for human rights issues, for child labor, and certainly supply chains and the sustainability elements and ESG, all of those topics became incredibly meaningful, not just to our customers, but to society as a whole over the last 2 years. So certainly have been continuing our growth rates. I know I'm on a panel with a bunch of entrepreneurs today, and, and I do feel that when you're growing at rates like we are, it's kind of a new business every year. So I'm going to consider myself an honorary entrepreneur today to be participating in this panel, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Kira. And I last week we said intrapreneur as well. So I'm sure there's a lot of innovation that's happening within Ascent Compliance. And it's kind of a spoiler alert. I think there's a really interesting common thread among the companies that are represented here today, a for-purpose and social good piece. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Catherine Atkinson from Can Immunize, over to you.
Hi there. Thanks so much for having me. It's really humbling to be able to participate on a panel with such amazing women. So I co-founded and chief operating officer at Can Immunize. So like Erin, this was research that was happening here in Ottawa at the University of Ottawa and the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute prior to the pandemic. So we decided to spin out the company in late 2018 to provide solutions for government and organizations who are looking to administer, manage, and really protect citizens with immunization information. I'm joining you today from Whistler, so it might be the goggle tan that you're getting from me. So I born and raised in Ottawa, and we founded the company out of Ottawa, but when this new work reality came in and we could move wherever we were most productive, I went west. So right now I'm in Whistler.
Seems like a great choice. Very jealous at the moment. And over to you, Nuha Siddiqui from Earthos. One thing I do want to say is that Nuha's first job out of university is CEO. So how impressive is that?
It's so great to be here. And actually, I grew up in Ottawa, but I'm not there right now. We're actually operating here in Toronto. So I'm a little jealous. I wish I was there in person as well. At Earthos, we are creating plant-powered alternatives for traditional plastic inputs. So we focus on the raw materials itself and creating a more sustainable, fully compostable alternative for traditional plastics, but also making sure that it's compatible with existing infrastructure and supply chains. We work directly with manufacturers and converters who are creating single-use plastics like cutlery and packaging and bottle caps. But we also work with the end brands and CPGs who are actually using these products and distributing them globally. We're early stage still. We officially incorporated in 2018, right after we graduated. And we've now grown to a team of 20 here in Toronto. We're currently scaling. We're launching our first product to market this year. So hopefully you'll get to see some of our products.
Can't wait for that. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I think we're just going to dive right in, basically. We've talked a lot about this in our venture development team here at Invest Ottawa, but there's a lot of, especially in this age of social media, people are putting out lots of really positive announceables, and we all want to share, of course, in success. But there are, of course, always the pitfalls and the challenges that go along with being an entrepreneur, especially in a scaling organization. So I was hoping to kind of get some of the straight goods from you today. And I wanted to ask you how you describe those challenges and how you overcame a particular challenge, I guess, and maybe thinking about it in the lens of advice that you might provide to other entrepreneurs. So let's start off with Catherine from Can Immunize.
Thanks, Lise. That's a really tough question to distill one of the challenges that comes with growing and scaling a company, especially during the pandemic. I would say personally, one of the biggest challenges is figuring out how to be your best self at work and balance all of the things that need to get done to make your business successful and burning yourself and your team into the ground. And I think during the pandemic, when we didn't have the same social supports or the same kind of outlets that you'd normally have, whether it's going to meet your friends for dinner, going out, visiting your family, how you continue to be your best self at work and be a really good people leader. I know with our company, which is a software company, our most important asset is our team. It's definitely what powers our ability to deliver great products and services to our customers. So creating a positive culture where you have the right work-life balance while being able to scale and grow faster than your team was a really big challenge. And I think for us, it had highs and lows. I won't say we figured it out off the bat, nor that we have perfected it, but really in the organization, leading by example, taking the opportunity to not answer those emails at night, scheduling them in the morning, and making sure that you get out for your exercise and your activities that make you a whole person outside of work. Because I think it's really easy just to finish your meetings for the day, keep emailing, keep creating decks and working really hard on your company. And at some point, those returns are diminished. So being able to really prioritize yourself and the things that make you and your team their best people at work.
Fantastic. And that's why you look so fresh, despite all of your accomplishments, that work-life balance. How about you, Nuha?
Yeah, I think I agree. It's definitely really hard to narrow this one down, but maybe just thinking more on the earlier stage of growing the company. I think the initial challenge was always around just getting partners and customers to really take the product seriously and have that initial adoption, especially as a materials company when a lot of what you have to do is actually show the material in their hands and actually be able to create a demo or a prototype for them. In the early days, we didn't have enough resources to prove that out, but we wanted to scale and actually build that for them. So, knocking on doors of manufacturers, and when they're so traditional in the way that they've been sourcing and looking at products before, it was definitely a challenge. But we started realizing that, if we switch it to, instead of pitching to them and actually just sitting down and listening to what their problems are, because everyone wants to talk about problems that they have and how we could potentially solve them, and actually making sure that they're buying into the fact that you might be able to provide them a solution, even if it isn't right away, but when you can, that was really helpful for us. And that's what really changed things for us from a adoption perspective in the early days.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nuha. And Kira, maybe don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe if you can speak to the challenge around, being that sole female leader on an otherwise, all male executive team. If you're willing to focus in there, it'd be interesting to get your perspective.
Well, it's, I might pivot a little bit from that, Lise, because I've got other great female leaders on the team right now. So I might focus on something different if that's okay, Lise. And I think for me, one of the kind of, puzzles that I've dealt with scale is that the skill sets you needed, when you were a smaller, grittier company aren't always the same skill sets and the same people that you need to be able to scale and grow in different ways. And when you're all working so hard to continue to drive growth and new direction in the company, you get really, really close with your colleagues. You get really, really close with the people. And I don't want to make this, a women's issue, but women do tend to have a higher need to be liked in organization and create those relationships. And sometimes, over the last couple of years, we've had to make some difficult decisions about people who are incredibly strong and incredibly competent, but just weren't the right fit at the stage of the company that we were at. And so decisions had to be made about changing that perspective. And I think that's actually really healthy if you can manage it through having great, honest, open conversations about that. Because, someone being asked to change or move is a very personal decision. And some of that's just really based on the stage of the company and the skills that you need. And certain people are really great at the entrepreneurial grit, but may not always be able to, scale because they're really excellent at that early stage. And so for me, those conversations have been really difficult. But as we've scaled more, being honest about that and just confronting it head on before it gets to a difficult stage, I think has been a really important lesson for me to learn.
Thank you, Kira. Yeah, I remember you mentioning that, open communications in leadership is super important to you. So that example really resonates in that regard. So Erin, over to you. So nice to see you in person.
Thanks. So nice to be here. I think our biggest challenge has been I think it's similar to what Kira was saying, realizing we can't be all things to all people. So our AI it's an AI that can do a lot of powerful things, but we're still a small company and we want to scale. So we want to do repeatable things. And especially some of the earliest customers we had, we were bending over backwards to help them and to do what they needed. But now that, we kind of want to let go of some of those earlier projects that we did. It kind of reminds me, very early in my career, I worked at Bell Canada. And I was on a project where we had to get rid of the 7 people in Ontario still on a dial. Remember those dial phones with the...
No.
My kids don't know what that is. I actually saw one in an antique shop. And there were 7 people in Ontario. They had their own switching station and everything for these 7 people on these dial. And Bell couldn't just say, too bad, go get a button phone or whatever. Or no, that Bell doesn't do that. So we had to like try and convince them to get off these phones. And that's how I feel that we are with some of our customers, especially our earliest customers. Like, we don't do that anymore. We do these other things. Oh no, but we love this, you know? And I feel like I'm Bell trying to get them off the dial thing. And it's like this with a lot of our customers. Our staff will still say, yes, we can do that for you, because yes, technically we can. Okay. But it's a lot of work, and it's taking work away from our other customers. So we have to learn how to say no. This is what we do, not that. Yes, we can do that, but we're not doing that. We're doing this. So you can either do this too, or, you know, go elsewhere. And it is a tough thing to do, especially when you have big customers that are, you know, interesting and all that kind of stuff. So that's the staying focused on, especially as you scale, not providing custom solutions, but lather, rinse, repeat solutions.
Right. And so how do you, I guess, translate that value for those like laggard customers? Maybe that's not a fair term, but those that you're really having to use your power of persuasion to pull along with you.
Yeah, like this is, you know, it's a challenge, right? Because they really love what we're doing now. But we say to them, look, we're not maintaining that. It's going to get less good over time. And it is getting less good over time, but still, no, we still really love it. You know, it's a challenge. And it's an ongoing challenge, because like I said, my team, if I'm not, I mean, it's kind of like what Regina said in the last one, she's not a micromanager, so I'm not either. But at the same time, if I leave my team to their own devices, they will bend over backwards. And next thing you know, we're doing custom solutions and that are not repeatable for other customers, you know, so that's a challenge.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you. Okay. Well, I remember when I was doing my grad studies, the finance teacher said, or prof said, cash is king, but I'm going to say cash is queen. So let's talk a little bit about fundraising. Kira, as I mentioned or earlier on, you've just reached unicorn status as at Ascent Compliance, and I'm wondering if you have any tips or lessons learned that you could share with our audience members for successful fundraising.
Sure. And great question, and I think, I've been involved in a couple of subsequent rounds of fundraising, and I think there's probably a couple of observations that I would make as the amounts and the diligence have grown proportionately. Certainly the fit with the investors is, there is a lot of money available in the markets. And so finding a good fit with somebody who really wants to be involved in your growth and your development and is participating in really productive ways is important. And one of the things I really noticed in this last round is the amount of data. So that, at the heart, many investors are analysts, and they want to be able to have models and structures and predictability. And so the amount of data that they're looking for, as part of diligence. And sometimes, I was having to go back, and put in place practices or processes or models a little bit retroactively to be able to have data to be able to present and show. And so one of the things I've taken from our rounds of investment is that scaling data and having systems to be able to prepare the range of reports and all the permutations. Even though I'd been through those rounds and I thought I know the questions they're going to ask, there were always new questions about how to split the data and slice this and look at it in different ways. And so I think being really prepared from a data standpoint about markets and having a lot of that available and ready. They don't ask a question and then say, give me that data in a week or two. They're wanting that data in 48, 72 hours. So I think it's also them trying to see, what do you already have and what have you already been tracking? So I think the data story and the fit are two that I would that I've really taken from my recent experiences.
Wonderful, thanks. And Nuha, early on in Earthos's journey, you raised a significant amount in a seed round, and now you're considering a Series A. So same question, lessons learned and your experience, if you could.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree on the fit side of things. I think we jumped right into fundraising very quickly, and I think we didn't really take the time to reflect on what do we actually need. Really define what kind of value you're looking for from the partners as well, and make sure that it's both sides. As they're doing diligence on you, make sure that you're doing diligence on them, and talk to their portfolio companies and really understand the relationship that they have with some of their companies as well. We got really, really lucky with the partners we had early on, and I can't express enough about how much value they've added. But I would also say that, be as strategic as you can. Don't try to sort of follow that traditional VC path, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to bring on really strategic investors who may not be traditional VCs, or they could be really great customers or partners for you in the long run. So be open to the type of funds that you can engage with. And being here in Canada, one of the most important financing rounds that we had was linked with SDTC and non-dilutive capital, and how you can actually leverage those two early on in your journey to help you go a long way. And so really, really look at the bigger picture of it, and how you can put together a strategic round that of course brings in funds, but also helps you strategically grow. And the last thing I would touch on is around feedback and rejection. You're definitely going to get a lot of no's from a lot of funds, but always ask why. So if they give you a no, ask no, but why, and what do you need to see? Because just because they aren't investing in your first round, they may invest in your second round. And so understanding what they're looking for, so that you can go back and actually hold them accountable for some of the feedback they gave you, can be really powerful as well.
I love that. So you're using it as a learning experience, even when you do get the no's. Erin, you're in the process of raising funds as well. Do you have any kind of early impressions or approach to your fundraising?
Yeah, I think it's so funny as I hear Nuha say, because Nuha, you raised early, and I bootstrapped, and so I'm raising later. And you'll always hear, if you hear from somebody who bootstrapped or who raised early, they'll say, oh, I kind of wish I'd waited. And when you hear somebody who bootstrapped, they say, oh, I wish I'd done it before I had revenue. Because, and I don't know if it's grass is always greener on the other side, but I'm finding, so it's me and my business partner own the company, so we haven't sold any equity in the company yet. We've done debt financing, and so and so non-dilutive. And there's pros and cons to that. I think it's probably easier to, when Kira was talking about all the due diligence that they do on people, if you don't have revenue, there's not as much due diligence to do, right? It's like, I've got an idea. You either want to fund that idea or you don't want to fund that idea. I don't have models to show you, or, so there's a lot of, I think it's very liberating if you can do it to raise money early. There is a lot more due diligence and all that when you're a company that's got revenue and customers and all of that kind of stuff. So, and you're also expecting more credit because you've got revenue, right? So it's a little bit different. So I would actually, I think Nuha, you did a great thing. I would counsel people, if you can get out there and raise money early before you even have revenue. I think there's a lot of merit to doing that. And if you haven't, there's still lots of options. There's you're going through all this due diligence. There's also, there's lots of creative ways that you can divide up your company and what have you, so that you can still take advantage of those things while funding the R&D, which we have done. Like all of our R&D is done, our patents are earned. So that gives it some valuation. So you probably have to give less of the company. But I think there's pros and cons to both, for sure.
For sure. Thank you. And then Catherine, to date, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you've tapped into funding, but does any of this resonate, or thinking about future plans for how you might approach fundraising in the future, near or distant term?
Thanks, Lise. Yeah, I've been listening intently and getting the perspective from my fellow panelists. We've been really fortunate that we've also been bootstrapped since the founding of our company. And now we're looking at taking on different types of investment to help us continue to grow and adapt as the space that we are in is growing so fast. But definitely agree, it's quite complicated when you're going to raise after you're revenue positive, and you've had those pressures, Erin, that you touched on earlier around how your product can grow and change based on what customers need, because that's not always your original vision, or things might have evolved from kind of the idea that you started with. So Kira, certainly feeling the pain and pressure of getting data together in such a rapid fashion to fuel these conversations as your business is changing and growing. So I think any advice I would put forward would be to get organized early on that and have those systems in place, because when it's manual and you're having to revisit it so often, it can be a lot of work. But definitely looking on our side for a partner with good fit for what our organization is trying to achieve and what help beyond financing we would need to get there. Because I think, money gets you part of the way, but Nuha, as you said, strategic partnerships and people who share in your vision are so important. So that's definitely where we're at right now.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, yeah, I wish you I don't even need to wish you luck. So yeah, I just can't wait to hear the stories, the success stories that will be all over social media, the good news stories. And then in the background of that, of course, is all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it. So that's pretty cool.
Well, you'll get some of that too, Lise, as our ScaleUp partner, right? Seeing
Yes,
us through the ScaleUp program, you'll be there all the way.
You just send me a note and say, like, today is a sweat day, and I'll be like, okay, got it. I mentioned earlier just around a common thread that I saw among your companies, which is this for social good or for purpose. So Erin, in my view, the fact that your AI technology alleviates bias in market research and really, taps into getting to the truth. I see that as a for social good piece. Nuha, basically you are looking to obliterate single-use plastic in the world and this huge waste problem we have. Kira, Ascent compliance with, corporate social responsibility, supply chain transparency, human rights, all of these things that you're bringing to the fore. And Catherine, creating transparency around vaccine tracking and just making the world get back to quote unquote normal more expeditiously. I see the for social good. And so in the last couple of years, I think we've seen some struggles around recruitment and retention. And so I wanted to kind of tap into this notion of like, what are your strategies as companies? And I wonder if the for social good and the for purpose piece resonates as you're, one, looking to keep your top talent in the organization, and two, out there pounding the pavement looking for a new talent to join. So let's start with Nuha.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our purpose is everything for our team, for our partners. When we're thinking about the value prop for our team, it's about being able to give them a purpose that's so much bigger than just the role that they're going to be playing in the company, and actually having them understand the level of impact that they're driving with the role they have. And so internally, I think it's also helped us really define what our culture is and our values and our mission. If someone doesn't align with the purpose that we have as a company, and they're not the right fit for us as a company. And so we want to make sure that that's really clearly defined, and it is what really drives every single person who joins our team, who's currently on our team, because it's bigger than just one individual, the purpose that we have at Earthos. So it's been a huge advantage and asset for us as we've been building our team, and we're continuing to iterate on that and making sure that that's actually translating when we're recruiting our talent. Talent has been a really challenging aspect of scaling so far, and we're finally investing in a people team now to actually join and build out that function. So we're really looking forward to that as well.
I'm guessing that'll make Kira happy to hear.
Yeah.
So
we'll
Kira,
need some tips.
Yeah, maybe you can connect afterwards. That's the whole point of this.
Oh, were you wanting me to jump in next there? So sorry.
Sure, why not? I was trying to create a good transition there.
Okay, perfect. Yes, and I ruined it for you. But yeah, no, certainly the war on talent is significant, and I think, Ottawa through Invest Ottawa has done a great job of marketing Ottawa and the talent and the companies that are here. So it's meant that companies all over the world are trying to recruit Ottawa and Canadian talents. So certainly the market is really tight. And, just like Nuha, the purpose is really important to both new hires and candidates as well as existing team members. And so for us, we really, it's really important to us that we live the values of sustainability internally, just as we do with our product. We want that to be consistent, and we don't want people to feel any disconnect between their own set of values that they have at home and what they bring to the workplace, because it's exhausting to have to balance two very different sets of that. So it's really, really important that we live it and experience on an ongoing basis. And I'm just going to tell a quick 30-second story of mine, Lise. And, for me, when I'm going to say about 10 or 12 years ago, when my boys were young, I had a job where I would come home. I didn't always talk so positively, about the workplace, and not really realizing the impact it was having on my work-life balance. And there was a particular situation where I was inviting my team. They'd come into town for a QBR, a quarterly business review, and we were having dinner at my home. And I hadn't invited one of my superiors over because, for various reasons. And they found out about it. And, at the last minute, I said, you should join us. And while I'm driving home, to get dinner together, I'm phoning my husband and saying, you have to take the kids out of the house for when people come over, because I'm not sure what they're going to say about work. This is at the age when, they had no filters. And that was the exact moment, I think in my career where I realized just how crucial that connectivity to my own values and the values of work and what I bring home to my family, how incredibly important that was to me. And I deserved better, and I needed to make a change if that's how it was impacting me. So it's really, really important at all stages of people's career.
Wow, that's quite the moment. And now the way our sort of work lives and home lives are blended, it's important to have those things aligned. Erin, what about you?
Yeah, we're kind of fortunate in that a lot of the work that we do gets published in the media and what have you. And the two things that have been published the most are our work on mental health and suicide reduction and elections, which attracts, so a lot of young people were attracted to our company because of the suicide and mental health work. Now, when you come, you're not doing, that's one project, right? But it got a lot of media attention. So everybody gets to spend a little bit of time working on that because everybody wants to work on that. But people also like the election stuff because elections are so often, when you're using regular surveys, like all the parties have their own surveys and they're all very skewed, but Polly doesn't skew it at all. Polly's the name of our AI. She really just looks at what people are saying and publishes what her predictions are. And she's been incredibly accurate. And the team really does love, we have a lot of political junkies too on the team who love doing that sort of thing. So it definitely has attracted a lot of people to us from all over the world. In fact, we've had Americans applying and have moved to Canada because they heard about Polly. Like we've recruited a few people from the United States and all around. So we have people from England calling us. Like it's pretty neat because of that work has been published around the world. So I think it's really important to young people, especially today, to be working for a company that's got that element to it. And you're not just selling widgets or selling advertising or whatever, which is what a lot of analytics companies are doing, right? So
I totally agree. I feel like, that's such an interesting retention and recruitment strategy. It really has to be aligned with your mission. Okay, so Catherine, how about you quickly? And I wanted to do a quick time check. You said, yeah, okay. I'm being given a virtual hook over here. Okay, go ahead, Catherine.
I'll be really quick, and I don't want to end it on a downer. Certainly purpose is huge for people coming to work at Canadianize. And I think during the pandemic, when we were growing so rapidly, people who joined our team were able to feel like they were actively every day doing something to help get vaccines in arms and, kind of get us through. But I think it was quite apparent to us over the last year that purpose to get people in is not enough. And there's a lot of work that you have to do to create a good workplace. And we were fortunate coming from academia where there was this sense of psychological safety and exploration of ideas that we really brought into the company. And then we partnered with an HR firm, so knew how we definitely weren't big enough when we were starting to grow to have our own people team. So we were introduced to a firm called Bright Plus Early in Toronto, who provides kind of fractional HR support with a huge focus on DEI. And they were able to help advise us on implementing programs and kind of creating culture that mirrored our values. Did things like we just brought in a benefits program. So being able to have your culture grow alongside your purpose, I think is really big. And it's not quite enough just to have a great reason to get people in your organization. You have to then create a good place for people to stay and grow within their roles. And that was a huge investment of effort on our company's part over the last year, was to keep all this awesome talent that we were able to recruit, because there's a lot of tech companies that will pay a lot of money to build widgets to software developers. So if you want to keep them, it has to be so much more than the reason they showed up for the first day.
That was by no means a downer. That was incredible. And the inspiration around DEI, and that's another important facet. You know, people are really looking for companies that align and that have that diversity, inclusion, and equity within the organization as it grows. And so I'm really happy to hear that. I think, do we have time for audience questions or, oh, afraid not. Afraid not. I do want to say a huge thank you to all the panelists. I feel like we need to do a part 2. Sonia, let's start planning. But thank you so much for your time and your insights today. I, again, feel truly chuffed and honored to have been moderating this. And yeah, I guess maybe if there are questions after the fact, let us know and we'll follow up.
I'll be here at the networking.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Amazing, actionable insight for women leaders who are changing our world, keeping us healthier, more sustainable, more transparent, and more informed to make better decisions. Could not have chosen better leaders for that discussion. We're going to take 3 minutes, and this is your break. Yes, we're going to play some music. We're going to get everybody up and stretching, and then we're coming back with Manjula and Sarah Lacy, and you do not want to miss this. This is a no-holds-barred conversation that is just priceless. So join us back here in 3 minutes, please.
Winterland, tell me all your secrets. Fill me in on your wildest moments. Colored trees, your yellow leaves move me. Dancing roofs, your painted red shakes the room. When I get there, I'll let my feet roll. When I get there, I'll break in your arms, I'll lose control. When I get there, I'll know the answer. Let me know when I get closer. Winterland, you're my sailing ship. Guide me in when you head for your trip. Right out of this wicked black and into bright sand. Straight towards the warm sun and into his hands. When I get there, I'll let my feet roll. When I get there, I'll break in your arms, I'll lose control. When I get there, I'll know the answer. Let me know when I get closer. Winterland, whisper in my ear, make my troubles all disappear. Way on this wicked black, I'll feel the side sand. Right under the warm sun and in his hands. When I get there, I'll let my feet roll. When I get there, I'll break in your arms, I'll lose control. When I get there, I'll know the answer. Let me know when I get closer. When I get closer. much deeper, I will shout. Let me know when I get closer, open up the sky for me. When you say I'll dig much deeper, I will shout.
Goes so quickly, especially when we haven't had opportunities to connect. We're going to get everybody to get settled again. We need bacon a lot more networking time. This has been very valuable. My team is smiling and giggling because they have counseled on this. We're looking forward to having many, many events like this back here at Bayview, and there are more we're going to tell you about as we wrap up today's event. It's now my great pleasure to call forward our good friend to Ottawa, to Invest Ottawa, Bayview and Area X.O, Manjula Selvarajah, who is an incredibly well-known tech reporter, columnist to CBC. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hello. How are you?
It's been an incredible day. It's the first day of International Women's Week. We're thrilled to have you with us and just delighted to have you introduce our next very special keynote. I'm going to hand the microphone over to you. We look forward to hearing this no-holds-barred interview, Manjula.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have to say, I loved the session. There's so many gems in there. Thank you. Thank you, Sonia. So everyone, welcome to our keynote Fireside. The fastest way to describe our keynote, Sarah Lacy, is that she's a feminist, entrepreneur, mother, and a supporter of women. Sarah is the founder and CEO of Chairman Mom. She also founded the well-known Pando.com. Some of you may know it as the Pando Daily, while she was on mat leave in 2011. And then she built it into a sizable investigative journalism company. Now, she's been a journalist for nearly 20 years and is known for her fearless, outspoken reporting. She's been profiled in publications as varied as the New York Times and San Francisco Magazine. And she's also a prolific speaker. You can see her very often as a guest on national TV and radio as well. Her newest book is part memoir, part manifesto on the power of working mothers, and it has quite the title. Here it is. A Uterus is a Feature, Not a Bug, The Working Woman's Guide to Overthrowing the Patriarchy. So that gives you a sense of the kind of conversation we're going to have now. Sarah, welcome to Canada virtually. It's so good to have you with us virtually.
Thank you so much. I wish I could be there non-virtually. I was so excited when this came up, and I was like, I'm going to get to go see some of my friends in Canada, and you know, we're just not out of this thing. So I'm glad I can at least be there virtually.
Yeah, soon. We're gonna soon. Hopefully things are gonna turn around and you'll be in here because I think you'll love the energy at these sessions. I mean, I can't wait for them to slip out of virtual and to be with all of these women in the room. But you know, you have such a fascinating story. I think back to your public battles with giants like Uber, and I remember the time that an Uber executive suggested at a dinner that the company spend $1 million to dig up personal dirt on you and other journalists. I remember reading the BuzzFeed article, and I've always wanted to ask you this. Take me back to the moment that you heard that it happened. Well, like, what went through your mind?
Gosh, well, it's like I'm gonna get emotional talking about this because it was really terrifying, honestly. So I think the thing that's important to know, especially for journalists out there, is it's really easy for people to vilify us as like nameless, faceless people. I mean, you know this, Manjula, because you're a journalist. Like, we get threats, we get hate mail, we get, you know, nasty comments. That's par for the course. But I think there were a couple of things that were so disturbing about that moment. The first is I wasn't a nameless, faceless person to them. I had been friends with Travis Kalanick for years. I shared many investors with Uber. Many of those people had been in my home. They had held my children, and I was costing them money, and that wasn't okay with them. And that was where their humanity ended. And he didn't suggest $1 million. He detailed a plan that was already in place to go after me with a head count, with exactly what they were going to try to do to, and they felt wrongly. And this is one of the reasons I wrote my book that is at its core really about the power of motherhood, and why as women have we been gaslit into thinking the most superhuman thing that we can do that men by definition can't do is a weakness. They looked at me and said, she doesn't care if her company goes under. She doesn't care if we threaten her advertisers. She doesn't care if she loses friends. She doesn't care if she loses access. Everything else they'd already tried with me to silence me that works with other journalists, frankly, hadn't. And so they looked at me and said, her family is her weak spot. Let's destroy her family to shut her up. And that had never been done in the history of Silicon Valley. There's a lot of publications like The Information who tried to whitewash this when it happened. And they said, oh, that's business here. It isn't. I've been a journalist at the highest levels in Silicon Valley for 20 years. It was never done before. It was never done openly. It was never talked about at a dinner table. That was part of a rehabilitation tour for Travis Kalanick to convince journalists he wasn't as bad as they thought. That's where this plan was launched. And one journalist had the courage to defy the off-the-record rule of the dinner party and write about it, and it was Ben Smith. Every other journalist at that table, everyone else who calls themselves a journalist, Arianna Huffington, Michael Wolff, I can go down the list. They all kept that silence. My family was collateral damage for their access to that company. And every aspect of that is chilling. The fact that I almost didn't know. I didn't know Ben. I'd never met him. I never talked to him. I was in London having dinner with my business partner at an incredible Indian restaurant. I remember every detail of this so vividly. And I got a phone call. I got either a text or an email from Ben and said, hi, this is Ben Smith from BuzzFeed. Do you have a second to chat? And I'm one of those people, it's like, if I get called to the principal's office, my blood runs cold. I'm like, what have I done? What have I done? I always think I'm in trouble. And so I was terrified. Why is Ben Smith calling me? And I remember walking outside in London at about really late at night as he told me about this dinner party and the things that were said to me, the plans they had, people who had been friends of mine who decided, let's destroy her family to shut her up so our net worth can go from 40 billion to 50.
Oh my goodness. I think of those threats. I mean, let's look at the story of Pando. You in 2019, you sold Pando, publicly declaring that you were quitting journalism and ditching Silicon Valley because of that toxic culture, the history of harassments and threats and situations like this. Out of all of this, there must have been, sometimes I hate asking this of people when they've gone through a really tough journey, but I'm curious, there must have been some lessons that you picked up through that journey that have helped shape you as a leader now. What are those?
So, just to say, my current company is still based in San Francisco. So I haven't given up on Silicon Valley. I think there's a lot of good in Silicon Valley, but I was never going to cover it again. And I was never going to be a journalist, and I'll never be a journalist again. I've given too much of my soul to exposing the truth of this place, and someone else can do it now. I just cannot take the abuse anymore. But yeah, in terms of lessons, I think one of the most important lessons is, I think it's a line in that movie, Almost Famous. These aren't your friends. These aren't your friends. There are so many, I won't name names, but go back and look at every fawning thing that's been written about companies like Uber. It's usually male journalists who kind of want to be like Travis Kalanick and think they're his friend. There's a reason that it's typically women who are the real investigative journalism leaders in Silicon Valley. Not necessarily a friend of mine, but Kara Swisher, Jessica Lesson of The Information. There's a long line of female journalists who are the ones who call shit out. And I think it's because we're never in the club. And I think we're conditioned to not be in the club, and we know we're not in the club. And women always have to have our guard up in male-dominated situations to begin with. And I think it's a lot of the male journalists get suckered into these people are my friends. I feel great when I'm with them. I like riding on their planes. It is definitely hard when you live in a place like Silicon Valley where every single thing is about the tech world to be a journalist, because you do develop bonds with people. You do develop friendships with them, but you got to know where that line is. And you have to know that really, like, there is a quid pro quo of this relationship you have with them when the stroke of your keys can cost them tens of billions of dollars or make them tens of billions of dollars. And you have to always have that filter up. It's an exhausting way to live, but I'm glad that I'm glad I was always aware of that and never lost sight of it. Because, otherwise I think like some of the heartbreak of covering Silicon Valley would have been harder.
So you went on from 20 years in journalism, you went on from that to launch a Chairman Mom, a community for and of working women. What change are you trying to create with Chairman Mom?
I think the change I'm trying to create is the same change that really I was trying to create with journalism, but instead of tearing things down and exposing bad things, we're building something incredible that's basically, the opposite of the rest of the internet for working women. But our radical view, which should not be a radical view, is that women should live whatever life they choose. And if that means you want to devote all of your time to managing your household, raising your kid, volunteering at their school, that life doesn't need to be a career. That life doesn't need to be, a life like I've had that's about, setting things on fire and trying to make the world a better place. That life can be whatever it is you want, but it should be what you want, because way too many women right now are living the life someone else wants them to live. And that's our radical view. And we're going to help you. Only you can answer that question, but we are going to help you get there in whatever way we can. And sometimes that's going to be community. Sometimes it's going to be mentorship. Sometimes it's going to be finding just the right expert at the exact moment who you can pay by the hour to get the advice you need to do what you want to do. And sometimes it's going to be, our incredible online courses, which, help basically give women this mysterious keys to the kingdom that men pass down through mentorship, through promotions, through, male-dominated networks. But, we just have been cut out of.
It's interesting. I've heard you talk about this before, that there's advice that founders give founders, like some really good tips. And I was hoping that we can get into some of that good stuff. What are some of the common mistakes that you see women founders make?
So there's a couple. One is, and this is particularly something with younger female founders. I mean, younger than me. I'm in my 40s. That gives us a lot of range. But they, they think, there's so many women writing checks now. The number of female founders has gone way up. I'm going to only pitch to women because they'll understand me. And there was some early data that showed that firms that had one female founder would disproportionately fund more women. And so there was, reason for people to think that would work. If we had only pitched women VCs, we would not be in business right now. I am part of that 2% of venture-backed startups that are female founders and female CEOs. I mean, it is 2% of the industry. It is a 98% gender bias, which is staggering if you think about it. There's some numbers that say it's like in the 80s, but those aren't female CEOs. Those are founders. And you can call anyone a founder to tweak your numbers. That's not the important title to look at. Less than 3% of venture money goes to women. The reason I've beat those odds is I've fundraised from men. It's anecdotal. Maybe it's not everyone's experience, but certainly most of the female founders I know would say the same thing. It is men who are writing the checks that keep us in business, not the women.
So what you're saying is that even though it may be a tougher path, you're really cutting out a huge portion of the funding market if you decide that you're just going to go after people who can write checks that happen to be women.
Yeah, that look like you. Because here's the thing, if you're an underrepresented founder, and I don't say this to dog female VCs, there's a lot of incredible female VCs. I'm really glad there's more women writing checks. I think the increase of women who have that power in Silicon Valley and in the world is great. But the reality is it's still a minority. Those people frequently have smaller funds So they're writing you a smaller check. They don't have the pockets to continue to go deeper in your deeper rounds. And as a female founder, you will need that because you will never have the same ease of raising money that a man will. And the stage that I always see companies, female founded companies, die at is between seed and A, because you cannot raise, you have to have proven your story to a degree that male founders haven't. People won't write the FOMO check for you because they know they can always get in your company. They'll just pay more, and they're happy to do that once you're de-risked. It's just a different calculus. And so some female founders just don't have the deep pockets to keep you going through those times. That's one area we would have died if all of our investors had been the women who invested in our company, because they were seed and angel investors. Another thing is most women who are VCs who've come into these big storied firms, they're not the rainmaker partners. They're not the ones who can come in and, bang their fist on the table and get everything done just because they want that deal done. They're having to sell it. Another reason is female partners at these firms increasingly are looked at as the female partner. So they don't want to do all the female deals. They don't want to do all the yoga pants. They don't want to do a company with mom in the name. They want to prove they're not just there to do the girl deals. They're there to do all the deals. These women are in a difficult position coming into all male partnerships and having to prove that they're there on their merit, not that they're there because of an X chromosome and a box that had to be checked. So I don't envy the position they're in. There are very understandable reasons this is the case, but anyone thinking we solve this 2% of female founders getting money by just hiring female founders, the opposite has happened. As we got more women in venture capital in the pandemic, the percentage of money going to female founders got worse. We've got to stop thinking that's the answer. And instead, we need to start as female founders, as those of us that 2% of us who do have access to money, we have to put up wins, because this is an industry that is all about pattern recognition. They're not about data. As much as I know the previous panel, someone said it's all about data. It's not. It's all about story, and it's about pattern recognition. And until VCs pass on female founded deals and lose out on a big exit, they're not going to change their behavior. There's a reason that young men, when they go raise money in venture capital, literally dress like Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg, because it's an industry of pattern recognition. And we
So
have
that
to change
takes
the
me
pattern or it doesn't change.
perfect transition to what I had coming up in my head. Have you been asked to act like that, in some ways act like a man when you go in to try to make these deals?
Definitely. I mean, I think, one thing that I've really tried to unpack in the last couple of years that I think a lot of us have had both like a racial and feminist reckoning. Have we been that kind of woman? Have we queen beed someone? Have we covered up for men? Have we been, problematic white women? We've all been doing so much soul searching in the last couple of years about this. And one of the big pieces of internalized misogyny is female exceptionalism. It's taking pride in, I can hang with the boys. I can be in this world no one else can be in. And I absolutely fell into that earlier in my career. And I absolutely was the trope of a cool girl earlier in my career. And I was so frequently the only woman in a room, but people were fine with that because I was one of the guys. I mean, you fall into that. Either I fell into that and it encouraged it, or that was my personality, and that was one reason I did succeed. But it's a story you hear again and again and again, and these women who are the one women in the room. But when you go to the point of raising money and trying to build your business, I really caution women against trying to play the bro game, because the truth is it doesn't work for us. Look at the women who have been ousted from companies in the last couple of years. I mean, Elizabeth Holmes is the most obvious one. There's a long list. I'm not going to name them here because I don't want to pile on any women who've been kicked out of their companies for good or bad reasons. But they almost all tried to play the bro game. And we all know that if men had done the things those leaders did, they wouldn't have lost their job. Certainly, there are many, Elizabeth Holmes did terrible things. So did many male leaders in Silicon Valley. And there aren't 3 movies being made about them. There is an eager pile-on to tear women leaders down, and they will look for any reason to do it. You do not have the latitude to play the bro game. You can't front on your numbers. You can't exaggerate your numbers. And, I've had this with some of my investors being like, here's the thing, when you're trying to fundraise, people want to hear an exaggerated bull case story. If you're giving them your realistic numbers, they're in their head discounting them by 20%, you're not going to get funded. I can't go in with numbers like a YC bro can't. I will get asked different series of questions. And if they think my credibility is off, they won't fund me. I think women have to understand that you are playing a different game. Now, there's a lot of advantages in the game that you're playing, and there are ways to combat that. There's ways around that. There's ways to still win. I mean, I've successfully raised, millions and millions of dollars from some of the biggest investors on the planet. Like, I assure you, that's not a sign of, by saying that, I'm not saying don't go raise money, but women have to do this differently.
What's interesting, because I think that in my interviews with women entrepreneurs, the idea of raising money, that's where the fear comes in. And they know that either they needed to launch the idea or to scale things. Give us one or two tips that you think, what are some things that you do that you think would be valuable for women to practice when they do fundraising?
I love that question. So, a couple things. First of all, your network is everything, especially if you're a female founder. There's studies that show that if a woman is a known quantity, the unconscious bias actually falls away. So I took my baby fundraising with me for Pando. Like, I had a newborn baby in the room with me because I raised $3 million on maternity leave from some of the biggest investors in the planet. And that baby being in the room did not hurt my fundraising because they knew me, because they knew what I would do, because we went back a long time. If I was a founder off the street, first of all, as a woman, I probably wouldn't have gotten any of those meetings. Certainly with a baby in the room, would not have gotten a term sheet. So, when I was younger in my career, I went to everything. I mean, conferences like this are huge, but just go to every dinner, every just BS dinner that you're exhausted. It's the end of your day. You don't feel like going to. Those are all potential missed opportunities. You never know who you're going to sit next to. And an industry like Silicon Valley, where someone could move there at 19 and very quickly become a master of the universe, a couple of years later, having ends with people early on, believing in people, being friends with people before the world wants to believe in them and be friends with them, and building real relationships. And by friends, I should say friends, not friends. We already discussed the friend issue. But building those contacts, investing in that, doing it when you're building your career, coming up with people, so many of the people who were incredible sources for me and later investors, and in some cases later customers, were people that we all got to Silicon Valley when we were in our 20s. And, some of those people became billionaires and some of them became me. But, you never know when a relationship is going to help you. And just that endless drive to network, I would not be here and I would not have had the success if I didn't have the network that I did. And I think the other thing is, and again, with all due respect for the previous panel, I know when you're in a due diligence conversation, it's about data and it's about numbers. It's not when you're trying to get to that point. It is about story. We are hard-coded as human beings to be driven by story. Since the caveman days, this is how our brains have kept us alive and we've evolved as a species. It is all about story. And you've got to be able to really hone your narrative. And a big piece of that is not sounding like everyone else. There are so many women I know who have been, who've been told over and over again throughout their life that they're too much of something or too much of something. So they whittle themselves down and then they're nothing of nothing. I run a workshop several times a year that's part of our new media mastery course called How to Be Polarizing. I think women need to embrace being polarizing. And I realize I'm saying this to an audience of Canadian women who I assume are even more into being liked and feel like they can't offend people. But I mean, this is also an American thing, believe it or not, when it comes to women. Being polarizing is vital to what that story is, what that narrative is that's going to hook someone and want them to invest in you. Being nice is not enough to get investment dollars. It's not enough to build a big company. And I just want to say, when I say polarizing, I don't mean being a jerk. People look at people like Tucker Carlson or Donald Trump and they think, oh, that person's so polarizing. That person's not polarizing. That person's just self-interested in saying obnoxious things to amass power. That is very different than being polarizing. Being polarizing is standing for something and being insistent, consistent, and persistent that that's what you stand for, even when that's not a convenient stance to take. The beauty of this is it immediately eliminates people who are not value aligned with you and are not going to appreciate what you're bringing to the table. And you're avoiding the situation where as a CEO down the line, you're going to take a stance on something and your board isn't going to agree with you. But even more important to that, it draws the right people to you like the most powerful magnet on earth. So it is absolutely a distinguisher. And it's also, I mean, honestly, there's people who don't like me, who don't like what I stand for, but probably would still fund me because they know I am consistent, insistent, and persistent. And that is pretty much what you have to be as a founder to make it.
You have some nerve telling a Canadian audience not to. Again, it's exactly who you are. So it's on brand, Sarah. It's on brand. I'm going to say just to the audience here, oh my gosh, there's so much in here. I know people must have questions, so please pop them into the chat window. I'll make sure that we make some time. I think we have till 4, so I'll make sure that I put them to Sarah. So here, one of the things that you mentioned was this idea of, actually, let me just get directly into it. One of the things that founders face is how to put together that team. And there's some founders that may think, well, I've had to struggle with not finding a role because I was a woman and I want to make sure that I want to make change in the world. So I want to hire a diverse set of employees. But that can be really hard to do at the start because you may have this pressure to just get a team together and get it done. I'd love to hear you weigh in on that because I'm not convinced that people actually get to doing that later if they just wait.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating topic. And here's the thing, when you think about the wealth gap between men and women, not the salary gap, but the wealth gap. It's way bigger. And part of it has to do with who can take risk at those early stages, who can work for equity. And so it's this compounded thing. One of the things that makes it so hard to hire underrepresented folks for your early team as a startup is not just because there's few of them, not just because there's fewer of them who have done that job at that scale and made it successful, because that's enough. It's also who can afford to take that risk. If you've been systemically underpaid, if you haven't gotten like the bro angel deals where you were in a hot tub with someone and they gave you stock and then it ended up being worth a bunch of money, like if you haven't lived the financial life of a white man, you can't always take the risk to go work at a startup. These things compound and compound and compound, and they make it even harder to hire those diverse early teams than you would think, just based on the percentage of, people of color who could be a CTO or women of color of the experience of being a CTO versus white men. So it's like, I understand how stacked the deck can be against you to build a diverse team from day one. But it is so important because you can't change your culture later on. This is like, I know so many women who are so much more successful than me, so much richer, so much more powerful than me, have so much more influence, who always say, oh, one day when I get to this magical level, I'm going to be like you. I'm going to be outspoken. I'm going to call stuff out. And I always say, you're not, because you'd be doing it now, because there always is another level you want to get to. It's the same thing with building diverse teams. If you don't do it from the beginning, when are you going to prioritize it later? Are you going to prioritize it when you're trying to raise your A? Are you going to prioritize it when you're trying to keep your growth rate up? Everything is just going to get harder from then on out. When are you going to have the time to pause and prioritize it? And not only that, but diversity begets diversity. This is really the only thing that works. And it's also how you know you're not only building a diverse culture, which your numbers can tell you, but you're building an inclusive culture from day one. One of my favorite examples on this, and this was mind-blowing to me, was an interview that I did with Amy Errett, who is one of the best female entrepreneurs I know. She's the CEO and founder of Madison Reed. And I mean, Amy's whole life is about women. she's a lesbian. She's married to a woman. She has a daughter. She is building this company that's like, taking like all of like the BS chemicals and lies out of, off the shelf hair color that could burn a hole in the floor and isn't good for our hair. Every single thing she does is about women. She's the most women power, unapologetic person that I know. And she hit a point where her company was pretty far along, really successful, starting to get, that run up to could get bought, could go public, could create real wealth. And she realized her engineering team were all men. How on earth did Amy Errett end up with an all male engineering team? And so she was like, wow, I need to be more intentional about this. So she really sought after female candidates. She hired recruiters to only send her female candidates. She tapped her network. She interviewed loads and loads and loads and loads of incredible women. And none of them would take the job. Why would they not take the job? Because they went in and they saw it was an all-male engineering team. Yeah. And smart, in-demand women in the tech world have been conditioned rightly to go and look at a team and does it look like you? Do you see yourself represented in that senior team? Do you see yourself represented in the rank and file of that team? If not, most women rightly think that is a feature of a company and not a bug. So if you don't start getting this right on day one, it is not going to be easy to change it down the line.
Wow. Okay. I
should say, when we launched our platform at Chairman Mom, we actually delayed our beta for like 6 or 9 months because we knew it had to be a female CTO. We knew what we were building had to be the opposite of what women experience elsewhere on the internet. And it had to be built by a team that had that lived experience. She was so hard to find. She was expensive. We had to pay market rate for her. There was no, we'll make it up on stock. We'll make it up on equity. That was not a thing. But, that has paid dividends. And that's what we had to do to like walk the walk of what we were doing as a company. And it's a lot easier to delay that before you launch than delaying anything once you're in the market is.
So I've got a couple of questions coming in. I'm going to throw them at you. The first one that I have is from Edith. She says her question is personal. What are the qualities you seek for your own trusted advisors? What are the qualities you look for in them?
I think that I want people who are going to be a combination of honest while also being like it being useful honesty. I think there's a lot of people who are honest for the sake of honesty. And, if it's not something that's like actually going to help me, or it's not something that's doable for me, then that's not going to be super constructive and helpful. And like, I don't need to necessarily hear why we're going to fail because of X, Y, and Z when X, Y, and Z aren't variables that I can contain. So, I think a lot of people always say they want honesty. I think really what we want is like honesty that is constructive and actionable and useful, not just someone being like, oh, you suck at this. It's like, well, thanks. I didn't necessarily need that in my day. It's really hard to be a founder and you basically feel like you're getting kicked in the stomach at all times. And the world is always being bluntly honest with you. It's not that I want yes men, but I want someone who's going to be honest when it's actually going to hit a purpose, not just telling me why I suck. My first, I have PTSD from Pando board meetings. They were so rough. And my current board, it's like, they're very honest with me. They hold me to a high bar, but they're also nice. I mean, be nice to people. I think there's so much ego in this, like, oh, I'm going to give you the straight facts. And it's like, be nice to people at the same time. Tell people what they're also doing well. I feel like there's so much of boards and advisors who only tell you what you're doing wrong. And the thing with being a founder is like, there's always so much you're doing wrong and you're always failing every day and no one's more aware of that than you. You also need people around you who are reminding you what you're doing right.
It's interesting that philosophy reminds me of, I think it's NPR has some line like, we ask questions with niceness, not brutality or something of that. And I always think about that there's a way to deliver criticism and even questions. Erin, by the way, and I felt the same way too with that line that she just wants to give you some feedback. Embrace being polarizing. She says she loves this new definition. So I needed to pass that on to you. I have another question here too. You're a role model, and courage is something that runs throughout all of the work that you've done. You're certainly a role model for women when it comes to courage. how can we find that same courage within ourselves? And how can we build that muscle so that we can use it when we need it the most? And we've certainly needed it through these months of fear and uncertainty.
That's a great question. I think there's a couple different ways. I think the first thing is never underestimate the power that you have. And I don't know who you are, but someone looks up to you. Maybe it's just your kids. Maybe it's younger people at your company. Maybe if you're a teacher, it's your students. Everyone has people who look up to them, and take that seriously, and that you have power. Something you have power in some. I mean, you think about like, you're at you're at a customer service counter and you need, a flight or something. Like, think about like that person at that moment has so much power over the richest billionaire. Like, we all have moments in our life where we have power and we have influence. And it may not be as much as you want, and it may not be as much as someone else does. That doesn't mean it's not there. Also, a lot of us, I think everyone probably in this virtual room has some degree of privilege. Think about the privilege you have and how you can extend that privilege for others. If you are working at a big company and you're a white woman, you can advocate way more than women of color because you have way more privilege. So how do you think about in real time, okay, if I put myself out there, if I do this, if I advocate for this person, if I point out this microaggression, what is that really going to do to me? Am I really going to suffer any hardship? And what will it mean to someone else? I think just constantly calibrating that is really important. And, I think it's also, there's so little we can control about our fates, especially if you're a founder. You don't know. It's such a crapshoot that any company makes it or not. Do you want to, if you're going to fail, do you want to fail having played someone else's game according to their values, trying to please some other people? Or do you want to fail playing your game? And that's the thing for me. I would always rather fail playing my game. Because if I fail playing someone else's game according to their values to please or impress someone else, I'm never going to know if being true to myself is what would have made me successful.
Yes, I can. And I think we're getting feedback and comments that's resonating with people too. Let's look at the situation through the pandemic. And I want you to speak to women that are women leaders, women with power and influence. We know the pandemic has had a disproportionate impact on women. We read so much about it. We face losing the advances that women have gained through the decades. 1 in 4 women is considering exiting the workforce or scaling back on their career, according to PitchBot. Many women entrepreneurs are actually putting off their plans to start companies. It was happening in 2020. I'm sure if they went and took stats now, it would be the same journey. What can women leaders, again, those women with power and influence, what can they do to help create a more equitable and sustainable future for women as we emerge from the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because each one of us only has so much power and influence, right? But I'll tell you something that I did at what felt like a low point for women, for me. And this was like right after Donald Trump was elected to office. This was in the middle of like the most intense wave of the Me Too movement. This was right after I had taken my youngest daughter to the first ever Women's March in DC. It was a time that it was easy to feel very hopeless about the future for women globally, but also in our industry. And, I didn't have a lot of like power or money or influence or, anything at that point, or I didn't feel like it. I wasn't hiring people. I wasn't angel investing. I mean, it's like, what are the levers you can pull when you're not in that position? But I thought about what can I do? And I realized what I could do is I had a dining room, and I know a lot of people, and I like connecting people, and I like having people over and holding space for them. And I'm really good at holding space. I'm from the South. I'm a good hostess. I'm a good cook. So I started doing monthly dinners in my house for female founders and female VCs. And I had a list of about 100 people, and I sent an email once a month, and the first 20 people who RSVP'd would come. And it was just a safe space to talk about like all of the BS that we deal with on a daily basis, and particularly at this moment where all decades of stuff we had normalized were coming to the surface because of what was going on all around us. And also at a moment where women were in real time, were making decisions about, should I sue this person? Should I quit this job? Should I go to the media with this? Just the ability to give people a monthly safe space to go to when they were going through those things was really incredible. And people would show up at my house at like 6:30 in the evening, and they would sometimes not leave until like 2 or 3 in the morning. There was one time where a female CEO like came back through my kitchen. The bathroom was off my kitchen, and came back into the living room and was like eating my kids' lunch for the next day. I was like, no, this has gone too far. But you know, I knew that it was such a sign that people, that those 20 guests would have like claimed their spots within like 5 minutes. And it was like, even in a place like Silicon Valley, where you think everyone has innovated everything anyone could need in terms of the startup ecosystem, there just weren't a lot of things like that. And so, you know, if you're someone who, you know, if you can hire people, hire women, hire people of color, hire underrepresented groups, look for them, hold positions open for them, pay them well, fight for the budget to pay them well. Give them equity, even if you're giving them money, so that if you're successful, you'll get rich. Like, you know, if you're writing checks, write checks to underrepresented groups. I mean, there's the obvious things if your job gives you power, but if your job doesn't give you power, I bet you've got a dining room. And if not, I bet you've got a terrace or a backyard or a coffee table, or you've got something. You know, we all have something that we can do to help women, every single one of us.
That's a very important message. And Julia's commented she loves the dinner idea. I think Julia's going to be hosting dinners then, creating a safe space for women founders. I love that idea too. I was thinking we should do one for women journalists in the city. That's actually a great idea.
That's a great idea. And I mean, unfortunately, like most of the female journalists in Silicon Valley did not get along with one another. And so we couldn't do that. I'm hoping as Canadians, you guys are much nicer and could do that. Because man, being a female journalist is terrible.
Yeah, that's a whole other hour of a conversation. But I mean, gosh, you've seen the other end of it, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I usually ask people what advice they would give to their younger self, but the way I want to phrase that question to you is, what is the advice that you would give yourself back on that day that you launched Pando Daily, or the day back when you launched Chairman Mom? What's the advice that you wish you knew then?
God, that's hard. Well, I will say and I will answer your question, but the thing that I always tell, I have 2 daughters, the things that I always tell them is, my words bought our houses. We have millions of dollars in California real estate, paid for by my words. Paid for by what I had to say about the world and the fact that I was good enough at that job that people had to listen. I think gaslighting women out of their words is one of the most insidious things the patriarchy does to us. And I think insisting on the value of our words is so vital. And so that's what I would tell younger me, keep talking, because there was a lot of people who would tell me to shut up throughout my whole upbringing. So that's the younger self one that you didn't ask. In terms of, I don't know that I would say anything different in terms of the thing that I would say that I also did, I'll say this with Chairman Mom, is enjoy the ride, because you don't know what the ending is going to be. And here's the thing, even if Chairman Mom goes out of business tomorrow, it has been an incredible 4 years where we have made permanent and lasting changes in thousands of women's lives. We have helped thousands of women live the lives they want to, go after their calling, feel confident enough to say what their calling is, say what that ideal life is. Even before the pandemic, something like 60% of our audience were in the middle of making a major change in their life that they've been scared to do or put off before joining Chairman Mom. And I should say, we've actually rebranded since to Chairman Me, because it sounds weird every time I say Chairman Mom, because 40% of our community weren't moms. And so we thought we need to actually change to a name that, because people kept saying, this is so great, do I have to be a mom? And it's like, no. So everything that we were putting out in the world for working women, it turns out a lot of people, including men, wanted. But yeah, the fact that we have changed so many people's lives, the fact that I've been able to pay myself and my team a good salary for doing that, we've done it in a kind of culture that we agree with. You know, we are not super bro-y hustle culture. We work hard, but
on your own terms. Yeah.
Do it on our own terms. I think you have to enjoy the ride and feel like if this all goes away, you still did what you wanted to do every single day. There's not a magic point at the end where you get to do that. And I think with Pando, I mean, I don't know. At this point, I probably would have said, don't do it. Don't do it. That was such a hard 6 years. That was a brutal time in my life. I'm very proud of everything we did and the change we had on the world, but it's all still too raw for me to have.
We'll wait for the book. You know what?
Sarah,
don't even. We'll wait for the book when it gets there, because you know what? I think you have to lay it out in a book. My goodness, this has been a so invigorating, such a fantastic chat. Thank you for being so honest. It's really refreshing, and kind of, I know some of it was like pulling the Band-Aid, off, but I'm sure that all the entrepreneurs and leaders that are here with us really appreciate this. The people that are here with us virtually, thank you. And good luck.
My pleasure. And I just want to say to folks, I mean, if there's something that you're wrestling with, if you have a question that didn't get addressed, I mean, send me an email. I'm Sarah at Chairman Me. I'm very, very easy to get a hold of. We all have to help each other out. We all have to be there for each other. And, I promise you can do this. And even if you can't do it, you should still try, because you probably can.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Sarah. And to everyone tuning in, thank you so much. Stick around. There's more. There's the Ladies Who Launch session that's coming up in a few minutes. Thank you and good day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow. Sarah, I think that's one of the most empowering interviews I've ever had the privilege to be a part of. That was incredible. And the text messages I'm receiving about all of your insight and the actionable encouragement that you've delivered, you are truly the epitome of courage. So thank you so much for being a part of today. And Manjula, it's always a joy to collaborate with you.
Well, thank you for having me. Hopefully in person next time.
We guarantee it. You will be hearing from us, and we can't wait to welcome you to Canada's capital. I don't even know how to summarize some of the key takeaway stuff that was us, and how to fulfill your passion and to have courage and to live your purpose. Just unbelievable. I have to actually take time to process.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Wow. Well, we have a very special offer for everyone who's joining us today and all members of our community. Sarah is offering 20% off of her courses, including Media Mastery. It is an incredible opportunity. Chairman Me is a very powerful platform. So I do encourage you all, when you receive your thank you email for being with us, look for that code. It will be included, and it is F Factor. We are also very excited to announce our giveaway winners. So the Media Masterclass, Media Mastery, that is being offered by Sarah, all 10 of the founders that are coming into our IO Traction program are going to receive it. And so are the following two winners, Alicia Lynn and Hannah Mayer. You have also won packages. Thank you for being with us. As long as you are online, and Sam will confirm, that is exactly what you will be taking away today. Okay, so I just wanted to spend a moment thanking everyone for the time that they've spent with us today, for all of your encouragement, for your collaboration, for supporting women founders. It will take an incredible critical mass to drive the change that Sarah talked about, that our founders talked about, and Julie and Jennifer in our goals around SheBoot and Invest Ottawa, and everyone we're collaborating with. Please take the time to join us through different events for International Women's Week. They are truly a month of integrated activities. Tomorrow morning, we have our Women Angel Investor Breakfast and some incredible speakers, including Michelle Scarborough, who leads the Women in Tech Venture Fund. And as we mentioned earlier, Judy Hess, CEO of Copperleaf Technology, the only woman to bring a company public on the TSX last year. We have our Women Leading Globally in Cyber event on Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock. 3 incredibly empowering, diverse panels who will help you understand how we can address the shortage of 3.5 million people and build it with women and more diverse representation. We have the Elevate International Conference that's taking place right here on this stage, led by Salant Touchim, on International Women's Day. It is a full day event. You want networking, you want more of that vibe we had today, please be here with us. Incredibly powerful day. And Better Together, led by our friend Tusha Egampodi, who is a manager of engineering, director of engineering at Aurora Solar, here on the stage with Rita Alma, who you saw earlier today, and some incredible leaders talking about the importance and authentic allyship and championship and how we work together better as women and men towards those shared goals.
We also ask that you please let us know how we did today by filling out a short survey shared in the Hop-In chat. We also have some goodies to be won, and you'll be automatically entered into a draw. We now welcome you to join us for some networking. For those joining online, please make sure your way to the networking portion on the Hop-In platform. As we conclude the day, an open opportunity for mixing and mingling with peers, here are a few suggested icebreaker questions as you make your way. What advice do you wish you could give your younger self? What barriers do you face as a woman in tech, and how have you overcome them? What would you like to see change systematically when it comes to barriers facing women entrepreneurs? Thank you all for joining us today to helping inspire, connect, and equip women founders and leaders from every walk of life. We look forward to celebrating with you over the next month. Thank you.
InvestOttawa.ca/IWW calendar is evolving every day. Please join us. Thank you, everyone.